The pregnancy test hit the laboratory floor with a plastic crack that echoed like a gunshot. Lena Hart watched it skitter across white tile, spinning to a stop directly between her feet and the custom Italian shoes of Caleb Vaughn, billionaire CEO, single father to a grieving 5-year-old, and the man whose bed she'd woken up in exactly 6 weeks ago, thinking he was just some charming stranger from a bar. 2 pink lines stared up at them both. Her lungs seized. Not now, not the asthma, not in front of him. Everything went sideways as her knees buckled. And the last thing she heard before hitting the ground was Caleb shouting her name like it could pull her back from drowning. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this story travels. Hit that like button and stick around because what happens next will break your heart before it puts it back together. The bar was too loud, too crowded, and exactly what Lena needed. She squeezed through bodies pressed shoulder to shoulder, her cheap Target dress already sticking to her back from the humidity of 200 people breathing the same recycled air. The bass line from some remix she didn't recognize vibrated through the floor and up into her chest, and for the first time in 3 years, Lena Hart felt like maybe, just maybe, her life was about to change. "Another round," Maya screamed over the music, shoving a bright blue drink into Lena's hand. "You're going to work for Vaughn Industries. Do you understand how insane that is?" Lena did understand. She'd spent the last 72 hours since receiving the email unable to think about anything else. A full-time research internship at one of the biggest food science corporations in North America. Decent pay. Benefits. A real laboratory with equipment that didn't look like it belonged in a high school from 1987. It was everything she'd sacrificed for. Every double shift at the diner where drunk college kids left prayer cards instead of tips. Every night she'd chosen textbook chapters over sleep. Every time she'd walked past the pharmacy telling herself she didn't really need a new inhaler yet, that she could stretch it another month if she was careful. "I can't believe it's real," Lena said, and she had to shout it twice before Maya heard her. "It's real! You're brilliant, and they finally noticed!" Maya grabbed her shoulders, sloshing her drink. "Tonight, we celebrate. Tomorrow, you can go back to being stressed about everything." Lena laughed, and it felt good. Felt normal. She couldn't remember the last time she'd let herself just exist without calculating how many hours until her next shift, how much was left in her account, whether the check engine light in her dying Honda actually meant something expensive this time. The drink was too sweet and probably too strong, but she drank it anyway. That's when she saw him. He was standing near the bar, and he shouldn't have stood out in a crowd like this. Chicago was full of good-looking men in expensive shirts, but somehow he did. Dark hair that looked like he'd run his hands through it too many times. Sharp jawline. The kind of bone structure that belonged in cologne ads, except there was something tired around his eyes that made him seem real instead of polished. He was looking at his phone with an expression that Lena recognized immediately. Someone who didn't want to be here but didn't want to be anywhere else either. "Oh no," Maya said, following her gaze. "I know that look." "What look?" "The look that says you're about to make a terrible decision." "I'm looking at a person." "That's not a decision. That's just eyes functioning normally." "Uh-huh," Maya grinned. "Go talk to him." "Absolutely not." "Lena, when was the last time you talked to a man who wasn't asking if you wanted your coffee refilled?" She had a point. Lena's dating life had essentially flatlined somewhere around her second year of grad school when she'd realized that relationships required time and emotional bandwidth she simply didn't have. Her last actual date had been 14 months ago, with a software developer who'd spent 2 hours explaining cryptocurrency while she nodded and wondered if she'd left the stove on. "I don't even know what I'd say," Lena admitted. "You're a scientist. Collect data. Form a hypothesis. Test it." "That's not how—" But Maya was already shoving her forward, and Lena stumbled directly into the path of a waitress carrying a tray of shots. She pivoted awkwardly, overcorrected, and slammed shoulder first into someone solid. Very solid. "Sorry, She looked up. It was him. Of course it was him. The universe had a terrible sense of humor. "You're fine," he said, and his voice was deeper than she'd expected. He'd caught her elbow to steady her, and now they were standing too close in a way that would have been awkward except for how his hand was still on her arm, and neither of them had moved. "I'm not usually this coordinated," Lena said, which was possibly the dumbest thing she could have opened with. The corner of his mouth lifted, almost a smile. Rough night? Opposite, actually. Good night. Celebrating. Yeah, what are we celebrating? New job, research position, starts Monday. She was talking too fast, could hear herself doing it, couldn't stop. I've been waiting 3 years to hear back from this company, and they finally said yes, and I'm rambling, aren't I? Little bit. Now he was definitely smiling. What kind of research? Food chemistry. Flavor compounds, mostly. Figuring out why things taste the way they do and how to make them better. She waited for his eyes to glaze over the way they always did when she talked about work, but he just nodded. That's actually interesting. Most people think it sounds boring. Most people are idiots. He flagged down the bartender. What are you drinking? I don't even know. My friend ordered it. It's blue. That tells me nothing and everything at the same time. He ordered 2 whiskeys, neat, and handed her one. Try this instead. Lena took it, even though whiskey always tasted like burning to her. She sipped it carefully and tried not to make a face. He noticed anyway. You hate it. It's very brown. He laughed, and it changed his whole face. Suddenly, he didn't look tired anymore, just young and genuinely amused, and Lena felt something shift in her chest that had nothing to do with the alcohol. I'm Lena, she said. Caleb. He didn't offer a last name, and she didn't ask. They talked for an hour, then 2. Maya gave her a thumbs up from across the bar and disappeared with some guy in a baseball cap, and Lena barely noticed because Caleb was asking her about her thesis on umami receptors and actually listening to the answer. He told her he worked in food services, vague enough that she assumed he meant restaurants, and that he had a son who was 5 and obsessed with dinosaurs. Single dad? Lena asked, and immediately regretted it. Sorry, that's invasive. It's fine. Yeah, his mom died when he was a baby. I'm so sorry. Caleb shrugged, but there was something heavy in it. It's been 4 years. He doesn't remember her, which is... He stopped, took a drink. I don't know if that makes it better or worse. Both probably, Lena said quietly. Yeah. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and Lena felt it again, that shift, like standing too close to the edge of something high up. You want to get out of here? She should have said no. She was supposed to say no. She had work in the morning at the diner, and then a whole weekend of preparing for Monday, and she didn't do things like this. Didn't go home with strangers from bars, no matter how good their bone structure was, or how much they seemed to actually care about umami receptors. Yeah, Lena heard herself say. Okay. His apartment was ridiculous. Not an apartment, a penthouse. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, furniture that looked like it cost more than her car, art on the walls that was probably real instead of IKEA prints. Lena stood in the entrance feeling massively out of place in her $30 dress and scuffed flats. This is where you live? She couldn't keep the shock out of her voice. Caleb had the decency to look slightly embarrassed. I know it's a lot. A lot? Caleb, I have 4 roommates and we share 1 bathroom. This is... She gestured vaguely at everything. What do you actually do? Run a drug cartel? Nothing that interesting. He smiled, but something shifted behind his eyes. Careful now, guarded. Can I get you something? Water? Wine? More whiskey you'll pretend to enjoy? Water's good. He disappeared into what she assumed was the kitchen, and Lena wandered over to the windows. 23rd floor. The city sprawled out below them in a grid of lights, and she could see Lake Michigan in the distance, black and endless. On the glass table next to the couch, there was a framed photo of a little boy with dark curly hair holding a plastic T-Rex. He had Caleb's eyes. That's Dylan, Caleb said, coming back with 2 glasses. Took that last month at the Field Museum. He made me stand in front of the Sioux exhibit for 45 minutes while he asked questions. He's beautiful. He's a nightmare. Smart as hell and knows it. But Caleb's voice was soft when he said it. Proud. He's at my parents' place tonight. They do weekends sometimes, so I can pretend to have a life. Is this what having a life looks like? Lena gestured at the penthouse. Because I've been doing it wrong. Most of the time I just sit here working. He handed her the water. This is better. They were standing close again. Lena could smell his cologne, something expensive and cedarish, and she was very aware that they were alone in his apartment, and that she'd never done anything like this before, and that her hands were shaking slightly when she set down the glass. I should probably tell you, she said. I don't usually do this. Do what? Go home with men I just met. Any men, actually. My dating history is basically non-existent. Caleb studied her face. We don't have to do anything. We can just talk. I can call you a car if you want to leave. Do you want me to leave? No. The word hung between them. Lena made a decision. Possibly a terrible one, probably something she'd overthink for the next 6 months. But in that moment, standing in a penthouse she didn't belong in with a man she'd known for 3 hours, she decided to stop calculating consequences. She kissed him. Or maybe he kissed her. It was hard to tell who moved first, but suddenly his hands were in her hair and her back was against the window and everything else disappeared into static. He kissed like he'd been starving for it, and Lena heard herself make a sound she didn't recognize, desperate and needy, and nothing like the careful person she'd taught herself to be. Bedroom, Caleb managed, and his voice was wrecked. We should… Yes. They barely made it down the hallway. Caleb kept stopping to kiss her against walls, in doorways, and Lena's dress was half unzipped by the time they fell onto his bed in a tangle of limbs and breathless laughter. He paused then, hovering over her, and something in his expression shifted. Vulnerable suddenly. Real. I haven't done this since… He stopped. It's been a long time. Lena reached up and touched his face. Me too. I don't even know your last name. Hart. Lena Hart. Lena Hart, he repeated, like he was memorizing it. I'm really glad you celebrated tonight. Me too. She pulled him down, and the rest of the world disappeared entirely. Lena woke up to sunlight streaming through windows she didn't recognize, and a moment of pure panic before the previous night came rushing back. Caleb's penthouse, the bar. Oh God, what had she done? She turned her head carefully. Caleb was still asleep next to her, one arm thrown over his eyes, breathing deep and even. In sleep, he looked younger, peaceful. The sharp edges that he carried while awake had smoothed out into something gentler. He was also, Lena realized with growing horror, extremely recognizable. She'd been too tipsy and too focused on his face last night to notice the details, but now she saw the watch on the nightstand that probably cost more than her student loans, the monogrammed robe hanging on the bathroom door, the family photo on the dresser that showed Caleb in a tuxedo shaking hands with someone who looked very presidential. Her stomach dropped. Very slowly, trying not to wake him, Lena slid out of bed. Her dress was on the floor. She grabbed it, grabbed her shoes, grabbed her phone, and saw 17 texts from Maya ranging from "Get it, girl" to "Are you alive?" to "If you're dead, just send me a thumbs up so I know whether to call the police." She typed out, "Alive, leaving, tell you later." In the bathroom, she splashed water on her face and tried not to look at herself in the mirror because she knew what she'd see. Someone who'd made a massive mistake. Someone who'd slept with a stranger without thinking about consequences, and now had to figure out how to get out of his apartment without the walk of shame turning into a sprint of shame. When she came out, Caleb was sitting up in bed, looking disoriented and rumpled and unfairly attractive. "Hey," he said, and his voice was rough from sleep. "You're leaving? I have to get to work. It's Saturday. I work Saturdays." The lie came out smooth and easy. She was already backing toward the door, clutching her shoes. "Last night was great, really great, but I need to go." Caleb stood up, and Lena's brain short-circuited momentarily because he was shirtless and wearing only boxer briefs, and this was not helping her decision-making process. "Can I get your number?" he asked. "I don't think that's a good idea." "Why not?" "Because you're clearly rich, and I'm clearly not. And I don't even know what you do for a living, and I have a new job starting Monday that I can't afford to screw up, and this was supposed to be one night of not thinking about consequences, except now all I can think about is consequences." "Because I don't do this," Lena said instead. "Last night it was a one-time thing, a celebration. I'm sorry." She saw something flicker across his face. Disappointment, maybe, or understanding. He didn't try to stop her. "Okay," Caleb said quietly. "I hope the new job goes well." "Thanks." Lena made it to the elevator before she let herself feel anything, made it to the lobby, made it to the street where she called an Uber with shaking hands, and then finally, sitting in the back of a stranger's Prius, let herself process what she'd just done. She'd slept with someone, A rich someone. An anonymous rich someone who she'd probably never see again, and who would become nothing more than a strange, surreal memory of the night before her life changed. The phone in her hand buzzed. Maya. Details. Now. Lena typed back, later, I promise, need to process first. Then she opened her email and stared at the message she'd read approximately 400 times since receiving it. Subject. Internship offer. Vaughn Industries. Dear Ms. Hart, we are pleased to offer you a position as research intern in our food chemistry division, reporting directly to our innovation lab. Your start date is Monday, May 6th. Please arrive at 8 a.m. for orientation. Welcome to the Vaughn Industries family. The signature at the bottom was from someone named Patricia Chen, Director of Human Resources. No mention of who actually owned the company, no photo of the CEO. Lena had been too excited to look any of that up. She made a mental note to Google the company when she got home, maybe figure out who was actually in charge. But first she needed to shower and sleep and forget about the way Caleb had looked at her like she was something worth remembering. One night, that's all it was. Nothing that happened in a bar at midnight while celebrating could possibly intersect with her real life, he did. Monday morning arrived with the kind of anxiety that made Lena's hands shake while applying mascara. She'd changed outfits 4 times, finally settling on black slacks and a blue button-down that screamed, "Please take me seriously, even though I'm terrified." Her inhaler sat in her purse next to 2 backup inhalers because she wasn't taking chances. Vaughn Industries occupied a gleaming glass tower in downtown Chicago that made her feel small just looking at it. The lobby had marble floors and a reception desk that looked like it belonged in a spaceship. Lena checked in, got a visitor badge, and was directed to the 14th floor. The elevator ride up felt like ascending to her own execution. Patricia Chen turned out to be a friendly woman in her 50s who walked too fast and talked faster. You'll be working primarily in Lab 3, she explained, leading Lena through a maze of hallways. We have about 30 researchers in the division, most of them focused on different aspects of flavor development and food safety. Your supervisor is Dr. Reeves, but you'll collaborate across teams. The lab was beautiful. Actual new equipment, proper ventilation, benches that didn't wobble. Lena felt her anxiety shift slightly toward excitement. Morning briefing is at 9, Patricia continued. Usually just the lab team, but Mondays we sometimes get executives dropping in. Don't freak out if someone important walks through. Define important, Lena said. Patricia laughed. Just smile and pretend you know what you're doing. Works every time. The briefing room was already half full when they arrived. Lena grabbed a seat near the back and tried to look competent while people filed in around her. Scientists, mostly. She could tell by the combination of expensive degrees and questionable fashion choices. Her people. Dr. Reeves was a tall black woman with silver-streaked hair who commanded attention the moment she walked in. Morning, everyone. We've got a new intern starting today, Lena Hart, food chemistry specialist. Lena, welcome. Try not to blow anything up in your first week. Scattered laughter. Lena managed to smile. Now, Dr. Reeves continued, pulling up a presentation. Let's talk about the quarterly targets that corporate is pretending are reasonable. Lena was just starting to relax when the door at the back of the room opened. She didn't look at first, just heard the subtle shift in energy, the way conversations cut off mid-sentence. Then Dr. Reeves stopped talking entirely. Mr. Vaughn, she said, and her voice had changed, more formal. We weren't expecting you. Lena's brain processed the name half a second before her eyes confirmed it. Caleb walked into the room wearing a dark suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent, his hair slightly damp like he'd showered recently, and Lena felt the entire world tilt sideways. No, 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 no. He was scanning the room, nodding at people, and then his gaze landed on her and stopped, just completely stopped. She watched recognition hit him like a physical blow. His eyes went wide, his mouth opened slightly, and for a moment they just stared at each other across 20 feet of conference room while Lena's entire life collapsed in on itself. Caleb Vaughn, Vaughn Industries. She'd slept with her boss. She'd slept with the CEO. The billionaire single father who owned this entire building and probably half of Chicago, and definitely her entire career trajectory. I'll keep this brief, Caleb was saying, except his voice sounded strangled now. He wasn't looking at her anymore. very deliberately wasn't looking at her. Just wanted to welcome everyone back from the weekend. Patricia tells me we have a new researcher joining us. He stopped, actually stopped mid-sentence. Lena could feel every person in the room turning to look at her. Ms. Hart, Caleb managed. Welcome to Vaughn Industries. His eyes met hers again, and she saw panic there. Matching panic. The same, oh God, what have we done, that was currently making her lungs feel too small. Thank you, Lena heard herself say. Happy to be here. Lie. Massive lie. She wanted to be literally anywhere else. Caleb finished whatever he'd been saying. She didn't hear a word of it, and left the room without looking at her again. The moment the door closed, the tension released, and people went back to their conversations. Dr. Reeves leaned over. You okay? You look pale. Fine, Lena managed. Just nervous, new job jitters. You'll be great. Reeves doesn't hire idiots. She went back to the presentation, and Lena sat there trying to remember how to breathe properly. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Lena stared at it, deleted it, then immediately panicked that deleting it had been the wrong choice. But it was too late now, and her hands were shaking, and she could feel her chest getting tight in the way that meant her asthma was about to become a problem. Not here. Not now. She made it through the rest of the briefing on autopilot. Made it back to the lab. Made it to the bathroom, where she locked herself in a stall and used her inhaler twice while trying not to hyperventilate. This was bad. This was career-endingly, catastrophically bad. She'd slept with Caleb Vaughn. The Caleb Vaughn. And now she worked for him. And there were probably rules about that, definitely policies she'd violated without knowing. And if anyone found out, when anyone found out, because secrets like this didn't stay buried, her career would be over before it started. Lena managed to avoid Caleb for exactly 4 days. She came in early, left late, and learned the pattern of when executives typically toured the labs. Tuesday and Thursday afternoons were dangerous. Monday mornings. She became an expert at finding reasons to be somewhere else during those windows. The work itself was incredible. Actual research with actual resources. She spent Wednesday running chromatography tests on vanilla compounds and felt, for brief stretches, like her life might not be completely imploding. Then Friday afternoon happened. She was alone in Lab 3, finishing up some data entry, when the door opened and Caleb walked in. Not with an entourage, not with Patricia or Dr. Reeves running interference. Just him, looking exhausted and determined. Lena's first instinct was to run. Actually run. But he was between her and the door, and she was trapped. Don't, Caleb said, seeing her calculate escape routes. Please, I just want to talk. We can't. Lena's voice came out strangled. There are policies about this kind of thing. I know. He ran a hand through his hair, messing it up the way it had been that night at the bar. Believe me, I know, but we can't just pretend it didn't happen. Yes, we can. We have to. I need this job, Caleb. I can't. Her chest was getting tight again. She grabbed her inhaler from her pocket. Caleb's expression shifted immediately. Are you okay? Asthma, it's fine. It gets worse when I'm stressed. She took 2 puffs and tried to slow her breathing. This is the most stressed I've been in my entire life, so... Lena? You didn't tell me who you were. The words came out sharp, accusatory. You let me ramble about getting a job at your company, and you didn't say anything. I know. You lied to me. I didn't lie. I just didn't correct you when you made assumptions. He took a step closer. You seemed so happy. And I liked being just Caleb for a night instead of the CEO. Everyone treats like he's made of glass and money. You are made of money. Yeah, well, you didn't care about that. You talked to me about umami receptors like I was a real person. His voice cracked slightly. Do you know how rare that is? Lena wanted to stay angry. Anger was safer than whatever else she was feeling. But the way he was looking at her, tired and honest and genuinely conflicted, made it hard to hold on to. This can't happen, she said quietly. Whatever that night was, it's done. I'm an intern and you're... you. There's no version of this that doesn't destroy my career. What if I made sure it didn't? How? You can't protect me from gossip, from what people will say. She laughed, bitter. Poor girl from nowhere sleeps her way into a job at Vaughn Industries. That's the headline. That's all anyone will see. I wouldn't let them. You can't control what people think, Caleb. You can throw around money and power all you want, but you can't make this okay. She grabbed her bag. I'm asking you to leave me alone. Professionally, personally, all of it. Please. She pushed past him, and this time he let her go. Lena made it to the elevator before the tears started, and by the time she reached the lobby, she was crying hard enough that the security guard asked if she needed him to call someone. I'm fine, she lied, and walked out into the Chicago afternoon wondering how everything had gone so wrong so fast. Months. 3 weeks passed. Lena threw herself into work with the kind of intensity that made Dr. Reeves pull her aside and ask if she was sleeping enough. She wasn't. Sleep meant lying awake thinking about Caleb, about that night, about the way he'd looked at her in the lab like she was something precious that he'd broken. She started getting nauseous in the mornings. Stressed, she figured. Her body's way of processing anxiety. She bought antacids in bulk and kept working. The nausea got worse. Then came the exhaustion. Bone-deep, overwhelming tiredness that hit her around 2 p.m. every day and made her want to crawl under her desk and sleep for 1,000 years. She started drinking more coffee. It didn't help, Maya noticed. You look terrible. Thanks. That's exactly what I needed to hear. I'm serious. When's the last time you ate something that wasn't coffee? Lena tried to remember. Does coffee cake count? No, it does not. Maya shoved a protein bar at her. Eat this. And maybe see a doctor? You've been weird for weeks. I'm fine, just adjusting to the new job. But she wasn't fine, and somewhere in the back of her mind, a tiny voice was suggesting a possibility she absolutely could not afford to consider. She ignored it for another week. Then her period didn't come. Lena stared at her calendar, counting backward, forward, sideways, trying to make the math work out differently. But it had been 6 weeks since that night. 6 weeks since she'd last had a period. No. She bought a pregnancy test on her lunch break, hiding it under a magazine like she was purchasing something illegal. Took it in the bathroom at work because she couldn't wait until she got home, couldn't spend another 8 hours not knowing. 2 pink lines appeared before she'd even finished peeing. Lena sat on the toilet in a bathroom stall at Vaughn Industries and watched her entire life derail in real time. Pregnant. She was pregnant with Caleb Vaughn's baby, the billionaire CEO, who she'd begged to leave her alone. The single father who already had 1 child and probably 0 interest in another one with a woman who'd run out on him twice. The man whose company employed her and whose money could destroy her and whose lawyers would definitely make her sign something terrible. She was going to lose her job, her career, everything. The bathroom door opened and voices filtered in. 2 women from accounting complaining about expense reports. Lena stayed frozen in the stall, gripping the pregnancy test, trying not to make a sound. She needed to think, needed to figure out what to do, needed to... Her chest seized, the familiar tightness that meant her asthma was about to escalate from problem to emergency. She fumbled for her inhaler and realized with growing horror that it was in her purse. In the lab, the tightness got worse. Her vision started to blur at the edges. Lena tried to stand up and her legs didn't cooperate. She grabbed the stall wall, missed, and went down hard on her knees. The pregnancy test clattered across the tile floor and slid under the stall door into the main bathroom. "Oh my God," one of the accounting women. "Are you okay in there?" Lena couldn't answer, couldn't breathe. She heard someone say, "Call security," and then everything got fuzzy and distant. The stall door crashed open, someone must have crawled under, and hands grabbed her shoulders. "She's not breathing right. Where's the medical team?" Lena tried to say asthma, but it came out as a wheeze. More voices, more hands. Someone lifted her up and she caught a glimpse of the pregnancy test still lying on the floor. The 2 pink lines facing up like an accusation, and then the world tilted completely sideways. The last thing she heard before passing out was a familiar voice shouting, "Lena!" And even through the oxygen deprivation and the panic, she recognized it. Caleb had found her, and he'd seen the test. Lena woke up to the sound of machines beeping and the smell of antiseptic that meant hospital. Her throat felt raw, her chest ached, and there was an oxygen mask over her face that she immediately wanted to rip off. "Don't." A hand caught her wrist gently. "Leave it on." She turned her head and there was Caleb, sitting in a chair pulled up next to the bed, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His tie was gone, his shirt sleeves were rolled up, and there were dark circles under his eyes that hadn't been there before. Lena's brain kicked into gear slowly, piecing together fragments. The bathroom. The pregnancy test on the floor. Caleb's voice shouting her name. Oh God. She tried to sit up, and Caleb put a hand on her shoulder. Easy. You had a pretty severe asthma attack. They've got you on albuterol and oxygen. Doctor said you need to rest. How long? Her voice came out scratchy through the mask. 4 hours. They brought you in around 2. It's just past 6 now. He leaned back in the chair but didn't let go of her hand. She hadn't even realized he was holding it. You scared the hell out of me. Lena pulled the oxygen mask down despite his protest. You saw it. It wasn't a question. Caleb's expression did something complicated. Yeah, I saw it. I can explain. Is it mine? The question hung between them, quiet and terrified. Lena wanted to lie. Wanted to tell him it was someone else's, that she'd been seeing people, that the timing was wrong. Anything to make this less catastrophic than it already was. But she'd never been a good liar, and the way Caleb was looking at her, like she was holding his entire world in her hands, made it impossible. Yes, she whispered. Caleb made a sound like he'd been punched. His hand tightened around hers, and for a long moment he just sat there, staring at their joined hands like he was trying to solve an equation that didn't have an answer. How far along? He finally asked. 6 weeks. I just found out today. I was going to... She stopped. Going to what? Tell him? Run away? She hadn't gotten that far in her planning before her lungs had betrayed her. I didn't know what to do. And you were dealing with this alone. It wasn't a question, but there was something broken in his voice that made Lena's chest hurt worse than the asthma had. I didn't think I had a choice. You're my boss, Caleb. You own the company. If people find out, I don't care what people think. Easy for you to say. You're a billionaire. I'm a nobody from the South Side who can barely afford her rent. When this gets out, everyone's going to say I trapped you, that I got pregnant on purpose to keep... Stop. Caleb's voice cut through her spiral. Just stop. You think I don't know you? You ran away from me twice. You told me to leave you alone. If you were trying to trap me, you're doing a terrible job. Despite everything, Lena almost laughed. It came out as more of a sob. I'm scared, she admitted, and saying it out loud made it real in a way it hadn't been before. I'm terrified. I don't know how to do this. I can barely take care of myself, and now there's... She put a hand on her stomach. I don't even know if I want to keep it, or if I can. My insurance is garbage, and I'm still paying off student loans, and... Lena! Caleb shifted forward, both hands around hers now. Look at me. She did. Whatever you decide, I'm here. If you want to keep it, I'll help. If you don't, I'll still help. This isn't just your burden to carry. His voice cracked. And for what it's worth, I don't think you're a nobody. I think you're the smartest person I've ever met who also happens to make terrible decisions about which bars to celebrate in. That did make her laugh, watery and broken. I have a son already, Caleb said quietly. Dylan, you'd like him. He's loud and asks too many questions, and he's been asking me for months why I always look sad. He paused. I haven't been a real person in years. Just going through motions, working, taking care of him, existing. And then I met you, and for one night I remembered what it felt like to actually want something that wasn't on a corporate agenda. Caleb, I'm not asking you to be with me. I know I screwed that up already. But I am asking you to let me be part of this. However you want me involved, I'll do it. Doctor appointments, costs, whatever you need. Please don't shut me out. Lena studied his face, looking for the trap, the angle. But all she saw was exhaustion and honesty and something that looked a lot like hope, desperately trying not to get itself crushed. Okay, she heard herself say, okay. The relief that washed over Caleb's expression was almost painful to watch. A knock on the door interrupted them. A doctor came in, young, female, holding a tablet. Ms. Hart, you're awake. Good. I'm Dr. Okafor. How are you feeling? Like I got hit by a truck. That's the asthma attack. You're lucky Mr. Vaughn got to you when he did. Another few minutes and we'd be having a different conversation. She glanced at Caleb. I'm going to need to examine her privately, if you don't mind. Caleb stood immediately. I'll be right outside. After he left, Dr. Okafor did a quick check of Lena's vitals, asked about her medical history, and then pulled up a chair with the expression of someone about to deliver news that required sitting. So, she said, pregnant. Apparently. And asthmatic. Are you on any medications? Just the rescue inhaler. I was supposed to be on a daily controller, but it's expensive and my insurance doesn't... Lena stopped. It's not great insurance. We're going to fix that. Pregnancy and asthma is a combination we need to monitor closely. Uncontrolled asthma can affect the baby, and pregnancy can make asthma worse. It's a fun cycle. Dr. Okafor made notes on her tablet. I'm going to prescribe you a controller medication, and I want you following up with both a pulmonologist and an OB, weekly at first, then we'll see how it goes. I can't afford weekly appointments. Mr. Vaughn already said he's covering everything. Lena's stomach twisted. He can't just... He can, and he did. Signed all the paperwork while you were unconscious. Dr. Okafor looked up. If you want to fight him about it later, that's between you two. Right now, my job is making sure you and the baby stay healthy, and that means proper medication and monitoring. Understood? Lena nodded, feeling steamrolled. Good. I'm keeping you overnight for observation. If your levels look stable in the morning, you can go home. But I want you taking it easy for the next few days, no stress. She raised an eyebrow. I know that's asking a lot given the situation, but try. After Dr. Okafor left, Caleb came back in looking uncertain. Can I stay? Lena wanted to say no. Wanted to keep the walls up, keep him at a distance where he couldn't complicate things further. But she was exhausted and scared, and the idea of spending the night alone in a hospital room made her want to cry again. Yeah, she said. Stay. He pulled the chair back up next to the bed and sat down like he'd been given something valuable. For a while they didn't talk, just existed in the same space while machines beeped and nurses came and went. Finally, Lena broke the silence. Tell me about Dylan. Caleb's whole face changed when he talked about his son. The exhaustion lifted slightly, replaced by something softer. He's 5, obsessed with dinosaurs and space and asking why about everything. His favorite food is chicken nuggets shaped like dinosaurs specifically. Regular chicken nuggets are apparently unacceptable. Sounds like he has priorities. He's smart. Too smart sometimes. His mom... Caleb stopped, choosing words carefully. Emma died from complications after he was born. Blood clot. She was here one day and gone the next. Dylan never got to know her, and I have no idea how to explain that to him in a way that makes sense. I'm sorry. It was 4 years ago. Sometimes it feels like yesterday. Sometimes it feels like a different life. He rubbed his face. Being a single dad wasn't something I planned. I had nannies at first because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. But Dylan would cry every time I left for work, so I started working from home more, bringing him to the office, figuring it out as I went. That must have been hard. It was terrifying. Still is. Every day I'm convinced I'm screwing him up in some permanent way. Caleb looked at her. And now there's going to be another kid, and I don't know if I'm ready, but I guess that doesn't matter because it's happening anyway. We could... Lena stopped. There are options. If you don't want... Do you want it? The question caught her off guard. She'd been so busy panicking about logistics and money and career destruction that she hadn't actually stopped to ask herself that fundamental question. Did she want this baby? I don't know, Lena admitted. I never planned on having kids, never thought I could afford to, but now that it's real, now that it's actually happening, she put a hand on her stomach again. I think maybe I do, which is insane because my life is a disaster and I can barely take care of myself, but then we'll figure it out. You keep saying that like it's simple. It's not simple. It's complicated as hell. But the alternative is walking away, and I already did that with one family. I'm not doing it again. Caleb's voice was firm, final. You're not alone in this, Lena. I know I'm the last person you probably want tied to you right now, but tough. You're stuck with me. Something in Lena's chest cracked open. Not breaking, but shifting, making room for a possibility she hadn't let herself consider. Maybe this didn't have to be a disaster. Maybe it could just be complicated. They fell asleep like that, Caleb in the chair with his head on the edge of her bed, Lena with her hand still in his, and for the first time in weeks, she didn't wake up panicking. The next 3 weeks were strange in ways Lena hadn't anticipated. Caleb took her to her first OB appointment, an experience that involved way too much paperwork and a transvaginal ultrasound that made Lena want to crawl out of her own skin. But then the doctor found the heartbeat, fast and strong, and Caleb grabbed her hand so tight she thought he might break bones. That's... His voice cracked. That's the baby? That's the baby, the doctor confirmed. Lena stared at the screen showing a blob that barely looked human and felt something shift irrevocably inside her. This was real. This was happening. There was a tiny human with a heartbeat growing inside her, and she was responsible for keeping it alive. The panic must have shown on her face because Caleb squeezed her hand. We've got this. You don't know that. No, but I'm choosing to believe it anyway. At work, they maintained careful distance. Lena buried herself in research projects, and Caleb stayed in his executive offices. And if anyone noticed they'd both taken the same afternoon off for medical appointments, nobody said anything. Dr. Reeves pulled Lena aside once to ask if everything was okay, and Lena lied smoothly about needing to get her asthma under better control. The morning sickness was brutal. Lena spent most of her mornings hunched over the toilet in the lab bathroom, trying to be quiet about it. She kept saltines in her desk and ginger tea that she pretended was regular tea. Maya noticed immediately. You're pregnant. Lena nearly dropped her mug. What? You're pregnant. You've been weird for weeks. You're drinking ginger tea, which you hate, and you just turned green looking at my tuna sandwich. Maya crossed her arms. Who's the dad? Is it someone from work? Oh my God, is it that guy from the bar? I can't talk about this. That's a yes. Holy shit, Lena. Maya's eyes went wide. Wait, that guy from the bar. You never told me his name. Who was he? Maya. Oh my God, it's someone important. It's someone at your company. Is it your boss? Please tell me you didn't sleep with Dr. Reeves because she's married and it's Caleb Vaughn. Maya's mouth fell open. Actual open-mouthed shock. Caleb Vaughn, as in the CEO, as in the billionaire who owns half of Chicago. That would be him. And you're pregnant with his baby. Apparently. Maya sat down heavily in Lena's desk chair. I need you to start from the beginning and tell me everything. So Lena did. The whole story spilled out. Meeting Caleb at the bar, not knowing who he was, the penthouse, showing up to work and discovering the truth, the pregnancy test, the hospital, all of it. When she finished, Maya was staring at her like she'd grown a second head. This is insane, Maya finally said. This is like a movie plot. How are you even functioning right now? Barely. I'm terrified, Maya. What if people find out? What if they think I did this on purpose? My career is over before it started. Or, Maya said carefully, what if it's not? What if Caleb actually means it when he says he'll support you? He's a billionaire. They don't actually mean things like that. Some of them might. Maya grabbed her hands. Look, I'm not saying this isn't complicated as hell, but you're smart, you're capable, and if Caleb's offering help, maybe you should take it instead of trying to do everything alone like you always do. Lena wanted to argue, but Maya had a point. She'd spent her entire life convinced that asking for help was weakness, that the only person she could rely on was herself. But this was bigger than her stubbornness. He wants to be involved, Lena admitted. Doctor appointments, costs, everything. He even mentioned telling Dylan eventually. That's good, right? I don't know. It feels too easy, like there has to be a catch. Maybe the catch is that he's a decent person who wants to take responsibility. Maya squeezed her hands. Just think about it. That night, Caleb texted her. Can I take you to dinner? Somewhere quiet. We should talk about next steps. Lena stared at the message for 10 minutes before responding. Okay. They met at a small Italian place on the north side. The kind of restaurant that didn't have photographers lurking outside or tabloid reporters on speed dial. Caleb was already there when she arrived, sitting in a back corner booth looking nervous. Hey, he said, standing up when he saw her. Hey. They sat down and ordered. Lena got pasta because it was one of the few things that didn't make her nauseous lately. And for a few minutes, they just made small talk about work and weather and anything that wasn't the massive elephant sitting between them. Finally, Caleb put down his fork. We need to talk about the logistics. Okay? I've been thinking about this a lot, about what happens when you start showing, when people notice. We can't hide it forever. Lena's stomach clenched. I know. I want to go public before the media figures it out on their own. Caleb said it like he'd been rehearsing. Control the narrative instead of letting them control it for us. But only if you're okay with that. What does going public mean? A statement, something simple. Confirming that we're having a baby together and asking for privacy. We don't have to explain the timeline or how we met or any of it, just the facts. People are going to think I trapped you. Let them think whatever they want. I know the truth. You know the truth. That's what matters. He leaned forward. But I won't do it without your permission. This affects you more than it affects me, and I get that. Lena picked at her pasta, turning the idea over in her mind. Going public meant losing any chance of keeping her private life private. It meant becoming a headline. A story. The poor girl who got knocked up by the billionaire. But it also meant not hiding, not pretending, not living in constant fear of being discovered. Okay, she said quietly. Let's do it. Caleb looked surprised. Yeah, but I want to read the statement before it goes out. And I don't want anyone knowing where I live or showing up at my apartment. Can you make that happen? I'll have my PR team work with you directly, and I'll hire security if we need to, whatever keeps you safe. They finished dinner and Caleb walked her to her car, the dying Honda that looked absurd parked next to his Tesla. He stopped at her driver's side door, hands in his pockets, looking uncertain. Can I ask you something? He said. Sure. Why did you run? That morning after, you looked terrified. Lena leaned against the car. Because I woke up in a penthouse I didn't belong in with a man who was clearly way out of my league. I knew if I stayed, I'd get attached, and getting attached to people who don't fit in my world has never ended well for me. What if I want to fit in your world? You can't, Caleb. We're from completely different places. She gestured at his car, his watch, his everything. This is normal for you. For me, this is terrifying. Then we'll figure out somewhere in between. He reached out hesitantly, and when she didn't pull away, he took her hand. I'm not going anywhere, Lena. I know I'm not who you would have chosen for this, but I'm here anyway, and I'm pretty stubborn when I want to be. Despite everything, Lena smiled. I noticed. The statement went out 2 weeks later. Simple, professional, exactly what Caleb had promised. Caleb Vaughn and Lena Hart are expecting a child together. They ask that their privacy be respected during this time. The internet lost its collective mind. Within hours, Lena's name was trending on Twitter. Reporters showed up at Vaughn Industries, her apartment building, the grocery store where she bought her sad frozen dinners. Photos of her from college showed up on gossip sites alongside photos of Caleb at charity galas with beautiful women who looked like they belonged in his world. The comments were brutal. Gold digger. She trapped him. Poor guy. He's already a single dad, and now this nobody is taking advantage. Lena made the mistake of reading them. She sat in her apartment scrolling through hundreds of strangers tearing her apart and felt something inside her start to crack. Her phone rang. Caleb. Don't read the comments, he said immediately. Too late. Lena, they're right though. I don't belong in your world. This was a mistake. I should have... Stop. His voice was sharp. Whatever you're about to say, don't. This wasn't a mistake. You're not a mistake, and those people don't know you. They know enough. They know nothing. They see numbers in a bank account and make assumptions. But I know you, Lena. I know you work harder than anyone I've ever met. I know you're brilliant and stubborn and so scared of needing anyone that you'd rather suffer alone. And I know that our baby is lucky to have you as a mom. Lena was crying now, ugly crying into her phone. I'm scared. Me too, but we're going to be okay. Can you trust me on that? She wanted to. Despite everything, despite the voice in her head screaming that this was temporary, that he'd eventually realize what a complication she was and leave, she wanted to believe him. I'm trying, she whispered. That's enough. That's all I need. The next morning, Caleb showed up at her apartment with breakfast and a folder full of paperwork. What's this? Lena asked, eyeing the folder suspiciously. Options. I had my lawyer draw up some things. He spread papers across her tiny kitchen table. First option, I can put you on my insurance. Better coverage, all your appointments and medications covered. Second option, I can set up a trust for the baby. Medical expenses, education, everything taken care of. Third option, Caleb, this is too much. Which part? All of it. I can't accept. Why not? Because it feels like charity. Like you're paying me off. Caleb sat back, frustrated. It's not charity. It's support. It's making sure you and the baby have what you need. Why is that so hard for you to accept? Because I've spent my entire life taking care of myself. The words came out sharper than she meant them to. I don't know how to be someone who needs help. Every time I've relied on someone else, they've left. My dad left when I was 6. My mom worked 3 jobs and still couldn't keep the lights on. I learned early that the only person I could count on was me. And now you're pregnant and exhausted and can barely afford your medications. Caleb's voice gentled. Let me help. Not because you can't do it alone, but because you shouldn't have to. Lena looked at the papers spread across the table, at Caleb sitting in her cramped kitchen that probably fit inside his walk-in closet, at the life she'd built through sheer stubbornness starting to crack under the weight of everything she couldn't control. Okay, she said finally. The insurance. I'll take the insurance. And the trust? I need to think about it. Fair enough. Caleb started gathering papers. There's one more thing. What? Dylan knows. Lena's heart stopped. You told him? He overheard me on the phone with my lawyer, asked why I was talking about babies. Caleb rubbed his face. I couldn't lie to him, so I told him he was going to be a big brother. What did he say? He asked if that meant he'd have someone to play dinosaurs with. Caleb smiled slightly. Then he asked if he could meet you. Caleb, I know, it's fast, but he's excited, and honestly, it might be good for him to have someone else in his life besides me and my parents. He paused. No pressure, but if you want to meet him, he'd like that. Lena had no idea what to say to that. Meeting Caleb's son felt enormous, like crossing a line she couldn't uncross. But the hope in Caleb's voice made it impossible to say no. Okay, she heard herself say. When? This weekend? We could do something low-key. Park, maybe? Ice cream? Yeah. Okay. Saturday came too fast. Lena changed outfits 6 times before settling on jeans and a sweater. Nothing too fancy, nothing that screamed trying too hard. Caleb picked her up in a different car this time, still expensive but less flashy, and drove them to a park on the south side. Dylan was waiting by the playground, holding hands with an older woman Lena assumed was a nanny. But the moment he saw Caleb's car, he took off running. Dad! Caleb caught him mid-jump, swinging him up. Hey, buddy, you been good for Rose? Super good. She let me get a donut. Dylan was all energy, talking too fast. Then his eyes landed on Lena and he went suddenly shy. Are you Lena? That's me, Lena said, trying to sound normal and not like her heart was trying to escape her chest. You're pretty. Thank you. Dad said you're really smart, like scientist smart. I try to be. Dylan considered this seriously. Do you know about dinosaurs? A little bit. I know they lived a really long time ago and probably didn't taste very good. Dylan giggled. That's a weird thing to know. I study food. It's kind of my job to think about what things taste like. Even dinosaurs? Sure. Why not? That broke the ice. Dylan proceeded to tell her everything he knew about dinosaurs, which was a lot, while they walked through the park. Caleb hung back slightly, watching them with an expression Lena couldn't quite read. When they stopped for ice cream, Dylan insisted on sitting between them and explaining why chocolate was scientifically the best flavor. Lena found herself laughing, actually laughing, at his serious 5-year-old logic. You're going to have a baby? Dylan asked suddenly, ice cream dripping down his chin. Yeah, Lena said carefully. I am. Is it Dad's baby too? Yes. Good. Dad's really good at babies. He took care of me when I was little. Dylan kicked his legs under the bench. Are you going to live with us? Lena glanced at Caleb, panicked. He jumped in smoothly. Lena has her own apartment, buddy, but she'll be around a lot. Why doesn't she just live with us? Our house is really big. Because... Caleb looked helpless. It's complicated, Dylan. Adults always say that when they don't want to explain. But Dylan didn't push it. He went back to his ice cream, seemingly satisfied. Later, after they'd dropped Dylan back with Rose and Caleb was driving Lena home, he broke the silence. He likes you. He's a good kid. He is. Better than I probably deserve. Caleb pulled up to her building. Thank you for today. I know it was a lot. It was good. He's sweet. Lena. Caleb turned to face her. I know we're doing this backwards. Baby first, relationship maybe never. But I want you to know that I'm all in. Whatever this becomes, I'm here. Lena's chest did something complicated. She reached out and took his hand, threading their fingers together. I'm trying to believe that, she said quietly. I really am. That's all I'm asking. He walked her to her door, and this time when he hugged her goodbye, Lena let herself lean into it, let herself feel safe for just a moment in the arms of someone who kept promising he wouldn't leave, even if she didn't quite believe him yet. The weeks that followed felt like existing in two different worlds simultaneously. At work, Lena was the focused researcher who stayed late analyzing compound structures and avoided the executive floors. At home, she was the pregnant woman whose body was staging a full-scale revolt against everything she ate, and who fell asleep at 7:30 every night like someone had unplugged her. And then there was the third world, the one that was slowly taking shape around Caleb. He started showing up at her apartment most evenings around 6, always with food because he'd figured out she was more likely to eat if someone else cooked it. Sometimes Dylan came with him, filling her small space with noise and questions and plastic dinosaurs that ended up under her couch cushions. Other times it was just Caleb, and they'd sit on her worn-out sofa eating takeout and talking about nothing important until Lena couldn't keep her eyes open anymore. It was becoming routine, comfortable, and that terrified her more than the pregnancy did. You're getting attached, Maya said one afternoon when they met for coffee. Well, Lena had herbal tea because caffeine made her nauseous now, another thing pregnancy had stolen. I'm not attached. You smiled when you got his text just now. You never smile at your phone. He was asking if I wanted Thai food or Indian. That's just politeness. Maya gave her a look that said she wasn't buying it. Lena, the man brings you dinner every night. He went to your 16-week appointment and cried when they told you it's a boy. He's integrating you into his kid's life. You're attached whether you want to admit it or not. Lena stirred her tea, watching the bag swirl. What if he changes his mind? About what? All of it. The baby, me, this whole situation. What if he wakes up one day and realizes I'm just some complication he got stuck with and he's got lawyers who can make me disappear? That's not going to happen. You don't know that. Neither do you. But you're so busy waiting for him to leave that you're not even letting yourself enjoy what's happening right now. Maya reached across and grabbed her hand. I've known you for 8 years. I have never seen you let anyone take care of you. Maybe it's okay to try it for once. Lena wanted to argue, but her phone buzzed again. Caleb, Dylan wants to know if you like pepperoni pizza because apparently we're having a pizza party for dinner and you're invited. His words, not mine. Despite herself, Lena smiled. See? Maya said triumphantly. Attached. That night, Lena ended up on the floor of Caleb's living room. Actual house now, not the penthouse, because apparently he'd bought a place with a yard for Dylan, eating pizza while a 5-year-old explained the complex social dynamics of kindergarten. And then Marcus said my dinosaur wasn't even a real T-Rex because the arms were too long. But I told him that's because it's a toy and toys don't have to be perfect. Dylan was gesturing wildly with a slice of pizza, getting sauce on Caleb's very expensive rug. Right, Dad? Right, buddy. Caleb wiped sauce off Dylan's chin. But maybe eat over your plate? I am eating over my plate. You're eating over my rug. The rug is under my plate, so technically, Dylan, fine. He moved the pizza 6 inches to the left, back over his plate, and kept talking. Anyway, I told Marcus that when the baby comes, I'm going to teach him all about dinosaurs, so he'll be the smartest baby in the whole world. Lena felt something warm spread through her chest. That's really nice of you. I'm going to be the best big brother. Dad says being a big brother is an important job. It is, Caleb agreed, but he was looking at Lena when he said it, and there was something in his expression that made her stomach flip in a way that had nothing to do with pregnancy nausea. After Dylan went to bed, a process that involved 3 stories, 2 glasses of water, and a lengthy negotiation about whether dinosaurs needed to sleep with him, Lena and Caleb ended up in the kitchen. He was loading the dishwasher while she sat at the counter, exhausted in that bone-deep way that had become her new normal. "You're good with him," Lena said. "Dylan? I'm winging it most of the time." Caleb closed the dishwasher. "Some days I'm convinced I'm doing everything wrong."
"He seems happy." "He is. Happier lately, actually." Caleb leaned against the counter across from her. "He asked me the other day if you were going to be his mom." Lena's breath caught. "What did you tell him?" "That you're his friend and the baby's mom, and that's pretty special on its own." He paused. "Was that okay?" "Yeah, that was good." Lena picked at a napkin, shredding it into pieces. "I don't know how to be a mom, Caleb. I barely had one growing up. What if I'm terrible at it?"
"You won't be. You don't know that." "Yeah, I do. You want to know how I know?" He came around the counter and sat next to her. "Because you're already worrying about it. Terrible parents don't worry about whether they're going to be terrible. They just are." "That's not exactly scientific." "It's true, though." He reached over and stilled her hands, stopping her from destroying the napkin. "You're going to be great. And on the days you're not, I'll be here to help." Lena looked at their hands, his larger ones covering hers, and felt that dangerous warmth spreading again. "Why are you doing this?" "Doing what?" "All of it. The dinners, the appointments, letting me into Dylan's life. You could just write a check and hire a nanny and keep your distance. Most men in your position would." Caleb was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. "Because the night I met you, I felt like a real person for the first time in years. And then you disappeared and I thought I'd never see you again. When you walked into that lab, I thought I'd been given a second chance. And then you ran again, and I thought I'd lost you for good." "Caleb, I know this isn't what you wanted. I know I'm not what you would have chosen. But I'm choosing this, Lena. I'm choosing you and the baby and whatever mess we're making together, because being with you doesn't feel like a complication. It feels like coming back to life." Lena's eyes were stinging. "I don't know what to say to that." "You don't have to say anything." He squeezed her hands gently. "Just don't run away again. That's all I'm asking." She nodded, not trusting her voice, and Caleb pulled her into a hug that felt like safety and danger all wrapped up together. By the time Lena hit 20 weeks, her pregnancy was impossible to hide. Her scrubs at work didn't fit anymore, and she'd graduated to maternity clothes that made her feel like she was wearing a tent. The comments at work had started, people congratulating her, asking about the father, making assumptions. She'd gotten good at the polite smile and subject change. Dr. Reeves cornered her one afternoon in the lab. "So, Caleb Vaughn." Lena nearly dropped the beaker she was holding. "Excuse me?" "Come on. The whole building knows. You're pregnant." He announced he's having a baby with someone named Lena Hart, and you're the only Lena Hart who works here. I'm a scientist. I can connect dots. She crossed her arms. "I'm not judging. I just want to make sure you're okay." "I'm fine. Are you?" "Because this is a complicated situation, and if anyone's giving you trouble, no one's giving me trouble, at least not to my face." Lena set down the beaker carefully. "I know what people think, that I slept my way into this job or trapped him or whatever, but I earned this position before I even met him. I know you did. I hired you because you're brilliant, not because of who you're sleeping with." Dr. Reeves softened slightly. "But brilliant doesn't protect you from office politics. If things get difficult, you come to me. Understood?" "Understood." That night, Caleb had another surprise. He picked her up from work and drove them not to his house or her apartment, but to a building she didn't recognize in a neighborhood that definitely wasn't hers. "Where are we going?" Lena asked. "You'll see." He parked and led her into a modern apartment building with a doorman and an elevator that didn't smell like old takeout. On the 8th floor, he stopped at a door and pulled out a key. "Caleb, what is this?" "Just look." He opened the door. The apartment was beautiful. Hardwood floors, big windows with actual light, a kitchen that had counter space and appliances that looked like they'd been manufactured in this decade. It was empty except for a few pieces of furniture, a couch, a table, a bed visible through one of the doorway. Lena walked through slowly, taking it in. 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a living room that could fit her entire current apartment inside it. "I don't understand," she said finally. "It's yours, if you want it." Caleb stayed by the door, hands in his pockets.
Your lease is up next month, and I know you were looking at places and they were all terrible, so I found this one. It's close to work, close to my house, good security. There's a bedroom for you and one for the baby. Caleb, I can't afford. You're not paying for it. I am. Absolutely not. Lena, no. I already let you put me on your insurance and pay for my medications. I'm not letting you buy me an apartment. She could hear her voice rising. I'm not some charity case you need to save. I'm not trying to save you. I'm trying to make sure you're safe. Caleb stepped closer. Your building has broken locks and mold in the bathroom. You told me yourself the guy downstairs got robbed last month. You're about to have a baby and I can't. He stopped, running a hand through his hair in frustration. I can't sleep knowing you're there. Please, just take the apartment. It's too much. It's not enough. If I could, I'd. He stopped himself. You'd what? Nothing. Forget it. But Lena could see it in his face, what he wasn't saying. He wanted her at his house, wanted her in his life completely, not just for scheduled dinners and doctor appointments. And the terrifying part was that some small part of her wanted that too. I'll think about it, she said finally. Yeah? Yeah, but I'm not promising anything. She moved in 2 weeks later, and it took exactly one night in the new apartment for Lena to realize she'd made a massive mistake. Not because the apartment was bad, it was perfect, but because it made her aware of exactly how much she was starting to depend on Caleb. The furniture that appeared the next day, the groceries that showed up stocked in her fridge, the way he had a key and Dylan had already picked out which bedroom would be the baby's. It was all too much and somehow not enough at the same time. The anatomy scan happened at 22 weeks. Caleb met her at the doctor's office, and this time he brought Dylan with him because his nanny was sick and his parents were out of town. I want to see the baby, Dylan announced in the waiting room. I don't think they let kids in for the ultrasound, buddy, Caleb said, but the technician overheard and smiled. He can come in if it's okay with Mom. Both Dylan and Caleb looked at Lena. She realized with a jolt that they were calling her Mom. Not Lena. Mom. Sure, she managed. He can come in. The ultrasound room was small, and Dylan insisted on standing right next to the monitor where he could see everything. The technician squeezed gel onto Lena's stomach, now properly round and impossible to hide, and started moving the wand around. The baby appeared on screen, so much bigger than last time. Actual features now, fingers, toes, a profile that looked startlingly human. There's your brother, Caleb said softly, and Dylan's eyes went huge. That's the baby? That's him. He's so tiny. He'll get bigger. The technician measured things, checked things, made notes that Lena didn't fully understand because she was too focused on the screen, on the little human that was half her and half Caleb and entirely terrifying in its realness. Everything looks good, the technician said. Nice strong heartbeat. All the organs are developing normally. He's measuring right on track. When can he play with me? Dylan asked. Not for a while, buddy. Babies are pretty boring at first. That's okay. I'll teach him stuff when he gets bigger. Dylan looked at Lena. Are you scared? The question caught her off guard. A little bit, yeah. Dad was scared when I was a baby. He told me. I did, Caleb confirmed. I was terrified. But you didn't die or anything, Dylan said matter-of-factly. So it was okay. Lena laughed despite herself. That's true. I'll try not to die. Good. That night, after they dropped Dylan back at Caleb's house, he walked her up to her new apartment. At the door, he hesitated. Can I come in for a minute? Yeah, of course. Inside, Caleb paced her living room like he was trying to work up to something. Lena sat on the couch and waited. I've been thinking, he finally said. About what? About this. Us. The baby. He stopped pacing and faced her. I know we're doing this backwards. I know you didn't ask for any of this. But I can't keep pretending this is just about the baby anymore. Lena's heart started pounding. Caleb, I'm falling for you. Maybe already fell. I don't know when it happened. Probably that first night when you told me about umami receptors like they were the most fascinating thing in the world. But it happened. And I know that's not fair to you because you signed up to co-parent, not to deal with my feelings. But I can't. He stopped. I can't keep acting like showing up to your apartment every night is just about being supportive. I want to be here. I want to be with you.
And if you don't feel the same way, that's okay. I'll back off. But I needed you to know. Lena sat there, frozen, while her entire world reorganized itself around his words. Part of her had known, had felt it building in the way he looked at her, the way he remembered she hated cilantro, the way he'd learned to read her moods before she even identified them herself. But hearing him say it out loud made it real, made it something she had to respond to. I'm scared, she said finally. Of me, of this, of letting myself believe this is real and then having it fall apart. She looked up at him. Everyone leaves, Caleb, everyone. My dad, my mom emotionally, even when she was physically there, every friend I got close to in college. I learned to stop expecting people to stay because it hurt less when they didn't. I'm not going anywhere. You say that now, but what happens when the baby comes and reality hits? When I'm exhausted and crying and the apartment smells like diapers? When you remember you're a billionaire who could have anyone and you're stuck with someone who can barely afford her student loans? Caleb crossed the room and knelt in front of her, taking her hands. Lena, look at me. She did. I was stuck before I met you, stuck in a life that looked perfect on paper and felt empty in reality. I went through the motions, work, Dylan, sleep, repeat. And then you showed up in that bar talking too fast about your new job and you made me feel something again. You made me want something besides the next board meeting. His grip tightened. I'm not going to wake up one day and decide you're not worth it. You are worth it. You've always been worth it. You don't know that. Yes, I do. And eventually you'll believe me. He smiled slightly. I can wait. I'm patient when it matters. Lena felt tears sliding down her face. I don't know how to do this. Do what? Let someone in. Trust someone. I'm so bad at it. Then we'll figure it out together. Same way we're figuring out everything else. He reached up and wiped her tears with his thumb. I'm not asking you to have all the answers right now. I'm just asking you not to run away when things get scary. What if I mess this up? Then we'll fix it. That's what people who care about each other do. Lena looked at him, this impossible man who'd crashed into her life and refused to leave, and made a decision that felt like jumping off a cliff. Okay, she whispered. Okay? I'm not running. I'm staying right here. She took a shaky breath. And I'm falling for you too. Have been for weeks, maybe longer. I just didn't want to admit it. Caleb's expression did something that made her chest hurt in the best way. Yeah? Yeah. He kissed her then, gentle and careful, like she was something precious. And for the first time since this whole mess started, Lena let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, things could actually work out. They didn't talk about labels or what they were to each other. They didn't need to. Something had shifted, and they both felt it. Caleb started staying later at her apartment until one night he fell asleep on her couch and she didn't wake him up. The next morning, he made her breakfast, and it felt so natural that it scared her all over again. But she didn't run. The weeks blurred together in a haze of doctor appointments and lab work, and learning how to exist as something more than just co-parents. Caleb brought Dylan over most weekends, and they'd do normal family things. Parks, movies, the science museum where Dylan asked 1,000 questions, and Lena actually knew half the answers. It was good. Almost too good. Which is probably why the universe decided to blow it all up. It started with a text from a number Lena didn't recognize. You should know who you're really dealing with. Then a link. Lena clicked it despite knowing she shouldn't, and her phone loaded a gossip site with a headline that made her stomach drop. Billionaire's baby, mama, or gold digger. The truth about Lena Hart. The article was brutal. Photos of her from college looking tired and poor next to photos of Caleb at charity galas. Comments from anonymous sources claiming she'd been sleeping around, that the baby might not even be his, that she'd trapped him on purpose. But the worst part was the photos at the bottom. AI-generated images that looked horrifyingly real, showing Lena at dinner with another man. Kissing another man. The dates on the photos were from 3 weeks ago when she'd been visibly pregnant. Her phone rang. Caleb. Don't look at it, he said immediately. Too late. Her hands were shaking. Caleb, those photos are fake. I know they're fake. Like, how do you know? They look... Because you were with me 3 weeks ago at Dylan's school thing, remember? The spring concert where he sang off key for 10 minutes straight? His voice was tight. Someone's trying to make you look bad. and I'm going to find out who. Everyone's going to think I cheated on you. You can't cheat on me. We weren't even officially together 3 weeks ago." But she could hear the strain in his voice. "I'm handling this. My lawyers are already drafting cease and desist letters. That won't stop people from believing it." "Lena, I have to go." She hung up before he could respond. The next few days were a nightmare. The photos went viral. Reporters showed up at her apartment, at Vaughn Industries, at the grocery store. Her phone wouldn't stop buzzing with notifications. Strangers calling her terrible things, defending her, arguing about whether billionaires could be victims. Maya came over and physically removed her phone from her hands. "You need to stop reading the comments. They think I'm lying about the baby being his. Who cares what they think? I care. My entire reputation is being destroyed by fake photos and people I've never met." Lena was crying again. Seemed like all she did lately. What if Caleb starts to doubt? He won't. Have you seen the way that man looks at you? He's not doubting anything. But doubt had already planted itself in Lena's mind. Not about Caleb's feelings, but about whether this could survive. Whether she could survive being torn apart by strangers on the internet, while 8 months pregnant with contractions that were coming more frequently than they should. That night, the contractions got worse. Lena was alone in her apartment, had insisted on being alone despite Caleb's protests, when pain seized her abdomen hard enough to make her gasp. She waited for it to pass, but another one came 10 minutes later. Then 8 minutes. Then 6. Too soon. The baby wasn't due for another month. She called Caleb with shaking hands. "Something's wrong." He was there in 12 minutes, breaking probably every traffic law. He found her on the bathroom floor, crying and terrified, and scooped her up like she weighed nothing. "Hospital. Now." "It's too early." "I know. We're going anyway." The emergency room was a blur of lights and questions and monitors. They admitted her immediately, hooked her up to machines that showed what she already knew. The baby was in distress and her body was trying to deliver him too soon. A doctor she didn't recognize came in with a grim expression. "We need to stop the labor. The baby's not ready yet. We're going to give you medications to calm the contractions, but you need to stay calm. Stress can make this worse." "How am I supposed to stay calm?" Lena's voice cracked. "Everyone thinks I'm a liar and my baby is trying to come out a month early and..." "Breathe." Caleb was next to her, holding her hand. "Just breathe. Focus on me." "What if something happens to him?" "Nothing's going to happen. These doctors know what they're doing." But she could see the fear in his eyes that matched her own. They kept her overnight. The contractions slowed but didn't stop completely. Caleb refused to leave, sleeping in the chair next to her bed with his head tilted at an angle that was definitely going to hurt in the morning. Around 3 a.m., Lena woke up to find him awake, staring at her in the dim light from the monitors. "Can't sleep?" she whispered. "Kept thinking about losing you." His voice was rough. "Both of you. And I can't..." He stopped. "I already lost Emma. I can't do that again." "You're not going to lose us." "You don't know that." "Neither do you, but we're still here right now." She squeezed his hand. "I'm sorry I hung up on you. When the photos came out, I was scared and I ran again, and I promised I wouldn't do that. You were dealing with a lot." "That's not an excuse." She took a breath. "I know the photos are fake. I know you know they're fake. But part of me keeps thinking, what if people believe them? What if this follows us forever? What if our son grows up and sees articles calling his mom a gold digger? Then we'll deal with it when it happens. Together." Caleb stood up and carefully sat on the edge of her bed. "I don't care what strangers think about us. I care about you and the baby and Dylan. That's it. Everything else is noise. Easy for you to say. You're used to this." "I'm really not. But I'm learning." He touched her face gently. "We're going to be okay, Lena. All of us. I need you to believe that." She wanted to. Despite everything, the scandal, the fake photos, her body trying to betray her, she wanted to believe him. "I'm trying," she said. "That's enough." The next morning, the doctor cleared her to go home with strict instructions to rest. Caleb took her to his house instead of her apartment, and Lena was too tired to argue. Dylan was at school, and the house was quiet in a way that felt almost peaceful. "Stay here," Caleb said, setting her up on the couch with blankets and pillows. "Just for a few days until we know the contractions have stopped completely."
I have work. Dr. Reeves already approved your medical leave. You're not going anywhere. You can't just make decisions for me. Watch me. But his voice was gentle. Please, Lena, let me take care of you, just for a little while. She was too exhausted to fight. Okay, a few days. Those few days turned into a week. Caleb worked from home, checking on her between conference calls. Dylan came home from school and would curl up next to her on the couch, telling her about his day while putting his hand on her stomach to feel the baby kick. It was domestic and terrifying and exactly what Lena had always been afraid to want. And then Caleb's phone rang with news that changed everything. He took the call in the other room, but Lena could hear his voice rising. When he came back, his expression was dark. They found who did it. The fake photos. Who? Someone I used to date. Victoria Chen. We broke up 2 years ago, and apparently she's been keeping tabs on me since. He sat down heavily. She hired someone to create the images and leak them to the press. My lawyers have proof. Screenshots of conversations, payment records, everything. Lena felt something cold settle in her stomach. Why would she do that? Because she's angry I moved on, because she saw the announcement about the baby and decided to burn your reputation down. Caleb's jaw was tight. I'm suing her. For defamation, emotional distress, everything my lawyers can think of. She's not getting away with this. That won't fix what people already think. No, but it'll set the record straight, and I'm making a statement, publicly calling out the photos as fake and explaining exactly who created them and why. He looked at her. Unless you don't want me to. It's your call. Lena thought about it, about living under the cloud of those images forever, about her son growing up and finding them someday, about letting Victoria Chen win because she was too scared of more attention. Do it, she said. Make the statement. Sue her. I'm done running. Caleb smiled, and it was fierce. Okay then, let's burn it all down. The statement went out that afternoon, and the internet promptly lost its mind all over again. The narrative shift happened almost overnight. One day Lena was the villain in a tabloid drama. The next she was the victim of a scorned ex-girlfriend's revenge plot. The internet, fickle as always, pivoted from tearing her apart to defending her with the same intensity they'd used to destroy her. Victoria Chen became the new target. Her social media accounts got flooded with angry comments. Reporters dug into her past and found a pattern of unstable behavior that made the fake photos look like just one incident in a long history of bad decisions. Within 48 hours, she deleted all her accounts and hired her own lawyers. Lena watched it all unfold from Caleb's couch, still on bed rest, feeling strangely detached from the chaos, like it was happening to someone else. You're quiet, Caleb said, sitting down next to her with 2 mugs of tea. Dylan was at a friend's house, and the silence felt heavy. Just thinking. About? How fast people turn. 2 days ago they hated me. Now they're sending me flowers. She gestured at the arrangements covering every surface of his living room. It's all so fake. People want a villain. Victoria gave them one that wasn't you. Caleb handed her the tea. Does it bother you? I don't know. Maybe. Lena sipped the tea, some expensive herbal blend that probably cost more than her old weekly grocery budget. Part of me wants her to suffer for what she did, but mostly I just want it to be over. It will be. My lawyers are good at making things go away. Is that what you do? Make problems disappear with money? Caleb flinched slightly. Sometimes. When I have to. That must be nice. It's not as satisfying as you'd think. He set his mug down. Money fixes logistics. It doesn't fix how you felt when those photos came out, or how scared you were in the hospital. I'd give everything I have to undo that, and I can't. Lena felt her anger deflate. I'm not mad at you. You sound mad. I'm mad at the situation, at Victoria, at my body for trying to go into labor a month early. She put a hand on her stomach, feeling the baby shift. I'm tired, Caleb. Tired of drama and stress and feeling like I'm constantly waiting for the next disaster. I know. He pulled her against him, careful of her stomach. We're almost through it. The lawsuit will settle, the news cycle will move on, and then it's just us and the baby. You make it sound simple. It's not, but we'll figure it out anyway. Lena wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that they could actually have something normal after everything, but normal had never been something she got to keep. That night,
she woke up to contractions again. Different this time, stronger, more regular. She lay there for 20 minutes timing them before shaking Caleb awake. "We need to go to the hospital." He was up instantly. "How far apart?" 5 minutes. "They've been consistent for the last hour." "Why didn't you wake me sooner?" "I wanted to be sure." She tried to sit up and gasped as another contraction hit. "Okay, now I'm sure." The drive to the hospital was surreal. Middle of the night, empty streets, Caleb gripping the steering wheel so hard his knuckles were white. Lena focused on breathing through contractions and trying not to panic about the fact that the baby was still 3 weeks early. "Call your parents," she managed between contractions. "Someone needs to get Dylan in the morning." "Already texted my mom. She's heading to the house now." "What about work? You have that meeting tomorrow." "Lena, I don't care about the meeting. I care about you not giving birth in my car." They made it to the hospital with time to spare, though not much. The staff took one look at Lena's face and rushed her into a delivery room. Monitors, IV lines, doctors asking questions she could barely focus on answering. "How far along is she?" someone asked. 37 weeks, Caleb said. "Close enough. Baby should be fine, but we'll have NICU on standby just in case." A doctor Lena recognized from her previous scare appeared. Dr. Morrison, older woman with kind eyes. "Lena, remember me?" "Yeah." "Your body's decided it's done being pregnant. We're going to let this happen, but we're monitoring everything closely. You're already at 6 centimeters, so things are moving fast." "How fast?" "Could be a few hours, could be less. Every labor is different." Dr. Morrison checked the monitors. "How's your breathing? Any asthma symptoms?" "No, I'm okay." "Good. Let us know if that changes." She patted Lena's leg. "You're doing great." Lena didn't feel like she was doing great. She felt like her body had been hijacked by something primal and painful that she had no control over. The contractions were coming faster now, each one stealing her breath and making her grip Caleb's hand hard enough to leave marks. "I can't do this," she gasped after a particularly brutal contraction. "Yes, you can." "No, I really can't. This was a mistake. We should just—" Another contraction cut her off, and she made a sound she didn't recognize as coming from herself. "Breathe through it." Caleb was stroking her hair, his voice steady even though she could see fear in his eyes. "You're the strongest person I know. You can do this." "I'm not strong. I'm terrified." "Being terrified doesn't mean you're not strong." He kissed her forehead. "I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere." Time became weird after that. Contractions blurred together. At some point, she got an epidural that took the edge off, but didn't eliminate the pressure. Caleb stayed next to her the whole time, letting her crush his hand, wiping her face with a cool cloth, telling her she was doing amazing even when she told him to shut up. Around 4 in the morning, Dr. Morrison came back and checked her progress. "You're ready? Let's have a baby." The actual pushing part was both faster and harder than Lena expected. She'd read about it, attended classes, thought she was prepared, but nothing prepared her for the overwhelming intensity of it, the pressure, the burning, the primal need to get this baby out of her body right now. "One more push," Dr. Morrison said. "Give me everything you've got." Lena pushed, screaming through it, and suddenly there was release and the sound of crying, loud, angry crying. That was the most beautiful sound she'd ever heard. "It's a boy," someone said unnecessarily. Dr. Morrison lifted the baby up, red and covered in vernix and absolutely perfect. They placed him on Lena's chest, and she wrapped her arms around him instinctively, this tiny human who'd been living inside her for 9 months and was suddenly real and outside in hers. "Hi," she whispered, crying. "Hi, baby." The baby stopped crying and blinked up at her with dark blue eyes that would probably change color but right now looked just like Caleb's. His face was scrunched up and angry, and he had a surprising amount of dark hair, and Lena fell completely in love in the space of a heartbeat. She looked up at Caleb and found him crying too, silent tears streaming down his face as he stared at their son. "You want to cut the cord?" Dr. Morrison asked him. Caleb nodded, not trusting his voice, and did it with shaking hands. Then they took the baby to clean him up and check his vitals while Lena delivered the placenta and got stitched up. She barely noticed, too focused on watching the nurses work on her son across the room. "He's perfect," one of them announced. 6 pounds, 2 ounces, 17 inches long. Everything looks good. They wrapped him in a blanket and brought him back, placing him in Lena's arms again. She couldn't stop staring at him, at his tiny fingers that wrapped around hers, his rosebud mouth, the way his whole face scrunched up when he yawned. "We need a name," Caleb said softly, sitting on the edge of the bed next to them. They'd been arguing about names for weeks without reaching a decision. Lena had wanted something simple. Caleb kept suggesting names that sounded like future Supreme Court justices, but looking at this baby now, none of those names felt right. "What about Ethan?" Lena said. Caleb tested it out. "Ethan Vaughn." He smiled. "I like it." "Ethan James, after my dad." She paused. "The dad I never knew, before he left. I always thought if I had a son I'd give him that name, as like a do-over, a chance to make it mean something good." "Ethan James Vaughn," Caleb said, and his voice cracked again. "It's perfect." They sat there for a long time, just the three of them, while dawn started breaking outside the hospital windows. Ethan fell asleep in Lena's arms, and she couldn't bring herself to put him down even when the nurses offered to take him to the nursery. "I'm scared to let him go," she admitted. "Then don't. He's not going anywhere." Around 8 in the morning, Caleb's parents arrived with Dylan. Lena had met them only twice before, brief, polite interactions where she'd felt massively out of place in their world of old money and country clubs. But the moment they walked into the room, Caleb's mom went straight to Lena with tears in her eyes. "Oh, sweetheart, congratulations." She hugged Lena carefully, mindful of the baby. "He's beautiful." "Thank you." Dylan pushed forward, trying to see. "Where's the baby? Can I see him?" Caleb helped him up onto the bed. "This is your brother. His name is Ethan." Dylan stared at the sleeping baby with wide eyes. "He's really small." "You were that small once." "No, I wasn't." But Dylan reached out carefully and touched Ethan's hand. The baby's fingers curled reflexively around his, and Dylan's whole face lit up. "He's holding my hand." "He likes you," Lena said. "Can I hold him?" "Let's wait until you're sitting down somewhere safer, buddy," Caleb said. "But soon, I promise." They stayed for about an hour before Caleb's mom took Dylan home so he could get ready for school. Before they left, she pulled Lena aside. "I know this hasn't been easy for you," she said quietly. "All the publicity, the stress, but I want you to know we're so glad you're in Caleb's life, in all our lives. He's different now, happier, and that's because of you." Lena didn't know what to say to that. "I'm just trying not to screw it up. None of us know what we're doing. We're all just trying our best." She squeezed Lena's hand. "If you need anything, help with the baby, someone to talk to, anything at all, please call me. I mean that." After they left, exhaustion hit Lena like a freight train. The adrenaline that had been keeping her going finally wore off, and she could barely keep her eyes open. Caleb took Ethan and settled into the chair next to her bed, the baby asleep on his chest. "You should sleep," he said. "So should you." "I will. Just want to hold him a little longer first." Lena watched them, Caleb and Ethan, both sleeping now, looking peaceful in the morning light, and felt something shift permanently in her chest. This was her family, messy and complicated and nothing like she'd planned, but hers. She fell asleep with that thought, and for the first time in months, she didn't dream about disasters. They stayed in the hospital for 2 days. Ethan was healthy but small, so the doctors wanted to monitor him. Lena learned how to breastfeed, which turned out to be way harder than anyone had warned her about, and change diapers and interpret the different types of crying. Caleb learned alongside her, looking just as lost and determined as she felt. Dylan visited every day after school, always bringing something for the baby. A toy dinosaur, a drawing, a rock he'd found that he thought Ethan might like when he got bigger. He was gentle with his brother in a way that made Lena's heart hurt. On the second night, after Dylan had left and Ethan was asleep in the bassinet, Caleb pulled something out of his pocket. "I want to show you something," he said. It was a small velvet box. Lena's breath caught. "Caleb, just look. You don't have to say anything." He opened it. Inside was a ring. Not huge and flashy like she'd expected from a billionaire, but delicate and beautiful, a simple band with small diamonds that caught the light. It looked like something meant to be worn every day, not just shown off. "I bought this 3 weeks ago," Caleb said. "Before the scandal, before the fake photos, before everything blew up. I was waiting for the right moment, but I'm starting to think there's no such thing as a perfect moment. There's just now. Are you? Lena couldn't finish the sentence. I'm asking you to marry me. Not because of the baby. Babies, plural now. And not because of what people will think. I'm asking because I love you. Because I can't imagine my life without you in it. Because every good thing that's happened to me in the last year has been because you exist. He took her hand. I know we did everything backwards. I know you're probably exhausted and overwhelmed and this is terrible timing, but I couldn't wait anymore. Lena stared at the ring, at Caleb, at Ethan sleeping peacefully in his bassinet. She thought about all her rules about not depending on people, not trusting promises, keeping walls up to avoid getting hurt. And then she thought about how none of those rules had protected her anyway. She'd fallen for Caleb despite them, had let him in despite every instinct screaming at her to run, had built something real in the mess they'd made together. Yes, she heard herself say. Caleb's eyes went wide. Yes? Yes, I'll marry you. She started crying, which seemed to be her default setting lately. I love you too. I've been too scared to say it, but I do. I love you and this insane life we're building, and I want all of it. He kissed her then, carefully because she was still sore and recovering, and slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, because of course it did. Caleb probably had her ring size memorized along with her coffee order and the exact way she liked her eggs. We're really doing this, Lena said, looking at the ring. We really are. Your life is about to get so much more complicated. It's already complicated. Might as well make it official. Ethan chose that moment to wake up crying, and they both laughed because the timing was so perfectly imperfect. Caleb got him while Lena adjusted pillows for feeding, and they settled into the routine they were still figuring out. When do you want to get married? Caleb asked while Ethan ate. I don't know. I haven't thought that far ahead. We could do something small, just us and Dylan and our parents. Or we could wait until you're recovered and do something bigger. Small sounds good. Big sounds terrifying. Small it is, he paused. My mom's going to lose her mind when we tell her. In a good way? She's been dropping hints about grandchildren and marriage since the day we announced you were pregnant way. Lena smiled despite herself. What about Dylan? He asked me last month when you were going to be his real mom. I think he'll be thrilled. The word mom still felt strange. She was Ethan's mom biologically, but being Dylan's mom was different, chosen, earned. She didn't know if she deserved it, but she wanted to try. They told Dylan the next day when he came to visit. Caleb had wanted to wait, make it special, but Dylan noticed the ring immediately. What's that? He asked, pointing at Lena's hand. It's an engagement ring, Caleb said. It means Lena and I are getting married. Dylan's face went through several expressions very quickly. Confusion, understanding, and then pure joy. Really? Really? So Lena's going to be my mom? Lena's throat closed up. If that's okay with you. That's the best thing ever. Dylan threw himself at her for a hug, nearly squishing Ethan, who was sleeping in her arms. Can I call you Mom now? You can call me whatever you're comfortable with. I want to call you Mom. He pulled back, suddenly serious. My first mom died when I was a baby. Dad told me about her. But you're here now, and you're nice to me, and you're having my brother, so you're my mom too, right? Lena was full-on crying now. Yeah, baby, I'm your mom too. Caleb was crying again too, and they probably looked ridiculous. 3 people crying happy tears while a newborn slept through it all. But Lena didn't care. This was her family, all of them. They left the hospital the next morning. Caleb drove about 15 miles an hour the whole way home, paranoid about every bump and turn. Ethan slept through it in his car seat, completely unconcerned about his father's anxiety. We should go to your apartment, Lena said. Mine doesn't have all the baby stuff yet. About that, Caleb looked guilty. I may have moved most of your stuff to my place while you were in the hospital. You what? You're going to be my wife. It made sense to just consolidate. Your apartment is paid through the end of the month, so if you hate it, we can move everything back. Caleb, you can't just make decisions like that without asking me. I know. I'm sorry. He stopped at a red light and looked at her. I wanted you home. Both of you. Is that okay? Lena should have been angry, should have put her foot down about boundaries and autonomy. But looking at him, this man who'd rearranged his entire life around hers, who'd proposed in a hospital room, who drove like a grandma because he was terrified of hurting their son, she couldn't find it in herself to be mad. "It's okay," she said, "but next time, ask first." Deal. His house, their house now, she supposed, had been transformed. The nursery was fully set up with a crib and changing table and more baby supplies than any one infant could possibly need. Dylan's room had new curtains with dinosaurs on them. And in the master bedroom, Lena's clothes were hanging in the closet next to Caleb's like they had always been there. "You're very efficient when you want to be," she said. "I had help. My mom went a little overboard." He set down the car seat with Ethan still sleeping in it. "Do you hate it?" "No, it's just a lot to process." She sat on the bed, their bed, and looked around. "A week ago, I was terrified people thought I was a liar. Now I'm engaged and living with you, and we have a baby. It doesn't feel real." "We can slow down if you need to." "I don't think slowing down is an option anymore." She held up her hand, the ring catching light. "Besides, I said yes. I meant it. You can change your mind." "I don't want to change my mind. I'm just adjusting." She patted the bed next to her. "Come here." Caleb sat, and she leaned against him, exhausted and overwhelmed and happy in a way she hadn't known she could be. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For not giving up on me. For staying even when I kept pushing you away. For making me believe this could work. You did that yourself. I just refused to leave." They sat there while Ethan slept and the afternoon sun slanted through the windows. Lena knew there were still complications ahead, planning a wedding, figuring out how to be a parent to 2 kids, dealing with the remnants of the scandal. But for right now, in this moment, everything felt possible. The next few weeks were a blur of sleepless nights and learning curves. Ethan was a good baby as far as babies went, but he still needed to eat every 3 hours and had strong opinions about diaper changes. Lena's body was recovering slowly, and she felt like a zombie most days. Caleb had taken leave from work, which his board probably hated, but he ignored their complaints and focused on helping with the baby. Dylan adjusted surprisingly well to having a brother. He'd help with small tasks, bringing diapers, singing to Ethan when he cried, showing him his toy collection, even though the baby couldn't actually see or care yet. It was sweet and chaotic and nothing like Lena had imagined her life would look. They set a wedding date for 3 weeks out. Small ceremony, immediate family only, at a botanical garden that Caleb somehow managed to book on short notice. Lena didn't have the energy to plan anything elaborate, and honestly, she didn't want elaborate. She wanted real and simple and something that felt like them. Maya was scandalized when she found out. 3 weeks? Lena, you just had a baby. I know when I had the baby. I was there. You're insane. You can't plan a wedding in 3 weeks while taking care of a newborn. We're not really planning, just showing up and saying words. How hard can it be? Famous last words. Turns out even a small wedding required decisions. Flowers, food, what to wear, who would watch the kids during the ceremony, whether to have a photographer, or just let people take pictures on their phones. Lena's head was spinning by day 2 of planning. "We could just go to a courthouse," she suggested to Caleb one night while Ethan nursed. "We could. Is that what you want?" "I don't know what I want. I just don't want to stress about matching napkins or whatever." "Then we won't have napkins. Problem solved." "You can't have a wedding without napkins. Watch me." He kissed her forehead. "My mom is handling most of it anyway. All you have to do is show up and wear something you feel good in. What if I don't feel good in anything? My body still looks like I'm 6 months pregnant and nothing fits right." "Then wear whatever's comfortable. I don't care if you show up in sweatpants. I just want to marry you." Lena knew he meant it, which somehow made her want to cry again. "I'm a mess. You're perfect. I'm leaking breast milk and haven't washed my hair in 3 days, and I think I put Dylan's shirt on backwards this morning when I dressed him. Still perfect." He took Ethan from her when the baby finished eating and started burping him. "You're doing amazing, Lena. I know it doesn't feel like it, but you are." She wanted to believe him. Some days she did. Other days she felt like she was drowning and barely keeping her head above water. But they were figuring it out together, and that made it bearable. The night before the wedding, Lena couldn't sleep. Ethan was actually sleeping for once, a rare 4-hour stretch, but her brain wouldn't shut off. She kept thinking about everything that had led to this moment. The bar where they'd met, the pregnancy test on the laboratory floor, the hospital scare, the fake photos. All of it had been leading here, to tomorrow, to making this permanent. "You're thinking too loud," Caleb mumbled next to her. "Sorry." He rolled over and pulled her against him. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. I'm just nervous." "About the wedding?" "About everything. What if we're moving too fast? What if we're making a mistake?" "We're not making a mistake." "You don't know that." "Yes, I do." He was more awake now, propping himself up on one elbow. "Lena, we've already done the hard part. We survived scandal and stress and premature labor. A wedding is easy compared to that. But what if we can't make it work long term? What if the stress of 2 kids and your job and my career? Then we'll figure it out. Same way we've figured out everything else." He touched her face gently. "I'm not scared of hard work. I'm scared of losing you. Everything else we can handle." "You're very confident for someone who's been up every 3 hours for 2 weeks straight. That's exhaustion talking, not confidence." But he smiled. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow you're marrying me whether you're ready or not." "That's not very romantic." "I'll be romantic tomorrow. Tonight I'm tired." Lena laughed despite herself and curled into him. She did sleep eventually, and when she woke up, it was her wedding day. Maya showed up at 7 in the morning with coffee and a garment bag, looking far too awake for someone who'd stayed up helping Lena pump breast milk at 2 a.m. "You look terrible," she announced, walking into the bedroom. "Good morning to you too." Lena was holding Ethan, trying to get him to take a bottle so her breasts wouldn't leak through her wedding dress. "He won't eat. He ate an hour ago. He's fine." Maya took the baby from her. "Go shower. Caleb's mom will be here in 30 minutes with hair and makeup people, and you smell like spit up." "I always smell like spit up now. That's just my life." "Not today. Today you smell like a bride." Maya shooed her toward the bathroom. "Move." The shower was the first quiet moment Lena had had in weeks. She stood under the hot water longer than she should have, letting it wash away the exhaustion and anxiety. When she got out, she could hear voices in the bedroom. Maya, Caleb's mom, someone else she didn't recognize. She wrapped herself in a robe and opened the door to find her room had been transformed into what looked like a salon. 2 women were setting up makeup and hair stations, and Caleb's mom was hanging a dress on the closet door that Lena had never seen before. "What is that?" Lena asked. "Your wedding dress. I know you said you'd just wear something you already had, but I couldn't resist." Caleb's mom, she'd insisted Lena call her Patricia, looked nervous. "If you hate it, we can absolutely find something else. I kept the tags on." Lena walked over and touched the fabric. It was beautiful, simple and elegant, champagne-colored instead of white, with lace sleeves and a cut that would hide her still soft stomach. Not the kind of dress she would have bought for herself because she would have looked at the price tag and walked away, but exactly the kind of dress she secretly wanted. "It's perfect," she said quietly. Patricia's whole face lit up. "Really? You're not just saying that?" "I'm not just saying that. Thank you." "Oh, sweetheart." Patricia hugged her, careful not to mess up her wet hair. "I'm so happy you're joining our family. I know this has all been unconventional, but I want you to know we love you, all of us." Lena felt tears starting and blinked them back. "I'm going to cry off all the makeup before they even put it on." "That's what waterproof mascara is for." Patricia patted her cheek. "Now sit. Let these lovely women make you beautiful." The next 2 hours were a blur of hair curlers and foundation brushes and people telling Lena to close her eyes or tilt her head or hold still. Maya kept her entertained with stories about her latest dating disasters, and Patricia fed Ethan and changed him and somehow managed to coordinate everything without breaking a sweat. When they finally let Lena look in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. Her hair was up in some kind of elegant twist with small flowers woven through it. Her makeup was natural but polished, hiding the dark circles and exhaustion. And when she put on the dress, she actually looked like a bride instead of a sleep-deprived scientist who'd accidentally fallen into someone else's life. "You look stunning," Maya said, and her voice cracked. "I can't believe you're actually getting married." "Me neither." "Are you happy?" Lena thought about it. Was she happy? A year ago, she'd been alone in a terrible apartment, working double shifts, convinced that asking for help was weakness. Now she had a fiancé she loved, 2 kids, a family that actually wanted her, and a wedding happening in 3 hours. "Yeah," she said. "I'm terrified, but I'm happy." Good, because if you weren't, I'd kidnap you and we'd drive to Mexico. In what car? My Honda died last month. Details. We'd figure it out. Maya hugged her carefully. I'm really proud of you, for letting yourself have this. Lena hugged her back, and for a moment she let herself feel it. All the fear and hope and love tangled up together. Caleb had been exiled to his parents' house to get ready, so the house felt strange without him. Dylan had wanted to stay with Lena, so he was running around in his little suit making dinosaur noises while Patricia tried to convince him that velociraptors did not attend weddings. But what if they want to come, Dylan argued. Then they can watch from outside. The botanical garden has a strict no dinosaur policy. That's a dumb policy. Dylan, please don't call the wedding venue dumb on your dad's wedding day. Lena picked up Ethan, who was awake and making those newborn squeaky noises that meant he'd need to eat soon. She'd pumped earlier and left bottles in the fridge for whoever would be watching him during the ceremony, but holding him now made her anxious about leaving him at all. He'll be fine, Patricia said, reading her mind. My sister will take both boys during the ceremony. You'll barely be gone 20 minutes. What if he cries? Then he cries. Babies do that. You can't postpone your wedding every time Ethan needs something, or you'll never actually get married. She had a point. Lena kissed Ethan's head, careful not to get makeup on him, and passed him to Patricia. Okay, I'm trusting you. Good. Now let's get you to the garden before you change your mind. The botanical garden was somehow even more beautiful than Lena remembered from the photos. White flowers everywhere, hanging lights even though it was afternoon, chairs set up in neat rows facing an archway covered in ivy. It was small and intimate and exactly what she'd said she wanted without fully believing she'd get it. There were maybe 30 people there total. Caleb's parents and extended family, a few of his close friends, Dr. Reeves and some people from the lab who'd become friends, Maya and her boyfriend. No media, no photographers, except one that Patricia had hired who'd signed about 17 NDAs. Lena waited in a small building at the edge of the garden while people took their seats. Dylan was with her, designated ring bearer, taking his job very seriously. He had the rings in a small box that he kept checking every 30 seconds to make sure they hadn't disappeared. What if I drop them? He asked for the 5th time. Then we pick them up. It's not a big deal. But what if they roll away and we can't find them? Dylan, I promise the rings will be fine. Okay? He checked the box again. Are you nervous? A little bit. Why? You already live with us. This is just words and stuff. Out of the mouths of 5-year-olds. You're right. It's just words. Important words, though. Dad said these words mean you're a family forever. Yeah, they do. Good. I like being a family with you. He grabbed her hand. You're a really good mom. Lena's throat closed up. She knelt down to his level, careful of her dress. Thank you, sweetheart. That means a lot to me. You're welcome. Can I go now? I think they're starting. She laughed and stood back up. Yeah, go ahead. Dylan walked out with exaggerated seriousness, carrying the ring box like it contained national secrets. Lena watched through the doorway as he made it down the aisle without incident and took his place next to Caleb's best friend, some guy from college whose name Lena could never remember. Then the music started, and it was her turn. She'd chosen to walk alone because her father wasn't in the picture, and asking anyone else felt wrong. As she stepped out into the garden, everyone stood and turned to look at her, but Lena only saw Caleb. He was standing at the front in a dark suit, and the expression on his face when he saw her was worth every moment of stress and doubt that had led to this. He looked at her like she'd hung the moon, and Lena felt herself start to cry before she'd even made it halfway down the aisle. By the time she reached him, they were both crying, and the officiant, some judge that Caleb knew, had to wait a minute for them to collect themselves before starting. We good? The judge asked with a smile. Yeah, Caleb managed. We're good. The ceremony was short and simple. Traditional vows because neither of them had the energy to write their own. Caleb slipped the ring onto her finger with shaking hands, and Lena did the same for him, and then the judge was pronouncing them married, and Caleb was kissing her while everyone clapped and Dylan shouted, "Finally!" loud enough to make people laugh. That was it. Done. Married. They'd arranged for a small reception at Caleb's house afterward. Just cake and champagne and people standing around talking. Lena spent most of it holding Ethan because he'd decided he didn't like anyone else today. And Caleb stood next to her with one arm around her waist like he was afraid she might disappear. "You okay?" he asked at one point. "I'm married to a billionaire while wearing a breast pump under my dress, and our son is currently drooling on my shoulder. I'm perfect." He laughed. "That's very specific." "It's my life now." She looked up at him. "Our life?" "Our life," he agreed and kissed her forehead. Dr. Reeves found her later, champagne in hand. "Congratulations. Though I have to say, when I hired you 9 months ago, this was not what I expected." "You and me both." "How are you planning to handle work when your leave ends? Daycare? Nanny?"
"I don't know yet. Still figuring it out." Lena shifted Ethan to her other shoulder. "Is there going to be a problem? With me being married to Caleb and working at the company?"
"Technically, you don't report to him. You report to me. As long as that doesn't change, HR shouldn't have issues." Dr. Reeves paused. "But if you want my advice, don't try to prove yourself by working twice as hard as everyone else. You already proved yourself when I hired you. Anyone who has a problem with your relationship can take it up with me." "Thank you. That actually helps." "Good. Now go enjoy your wedding. Stop worrying about work for 5 minutes." Easier said than done, but Lena tried. She ate cake that was too sweet and drank sparkling cider because she was still nursing, and accepted congratulations from people she barely knew. Dylan stayed glued to her side most of the afternoon, showing anyone who would listen the dinosaur toy he'd gotten as a gift for being such a good ring bearer. By evening, everyone had left except Maya, who was helping clean up. "You survived," Maya said, collecting empty champagne glasses. "Barely." Lena was on the couch, both boys asleep on her. Dylan had crashed around 7, and Ethan had given up fighting sleep around the same time. "I think I'm going to sleep for a week." "You're a married woman now. You have responsibilities." "Don't remind me." Caleb came in from the kitchen where he'd been helping his mom pack up leftover food. He looked at Lena, covered in sleeping children, and smiled. "This is a good look for you." "I can't move. If I move, they'll wake up and I'll die." Dramatic. Accurate. But she was smiling. "Come sit with us." Caleb sat down carefully, putting his arm around her shoulders, and they stayed like that, all 4 of them tangled together on the couch, until Patricia came in to say goodbye. "I'm leaving the food in your fridge. There's enough for several days, so please actually eat it." She kissed both boys' heads, then Lena's, then Caleb's. "I'm so happy for you both. Call me if you need anything." After she left, the house fell quiet. Maya finished cleaning and slipped out with a wave, and then it was just them. The 4 of them. A family. "We should get them to bed," Lena said. "In a minute. I'm not ready to move yet." So they stayed there watching the last light fade from the windows, and Lena thought about all the ways her life had changed in less than a year. How she'd gone from convinced she had to do everything alone to sitting here surrounded by people who'd become her whole world. It wasn't perfect. Dylan would probably wake up with a nightmare around midnight. Ethan would need to eat at 2 and 5 and probably 8. Work would start back in a few weeks, and she'd have to figure out how to balance being a researcher and a mother and a wife all at once. There would be more stress, more complications, more moments where she felt like she was drowning, but she wouldn't be drowning alone anymore. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For not giving up on me. For staying even when I made it hard, for this." She gestured at everything, the house, the boys, the ring on her finger. "You don't have to thank me for loving you. That's not something you earn. It's just what you get." "That's really sappy." "I'm allowed to be sappy on my wedding day." Lena laughed and leaned her head on his shoulder. "I love you too." In case that wasn't clear. It was clear, but I like hearing it anyway. The first few months of marriage were harder than Lena expected. Not because anything was wrong, but because adjusting to living together full-time with 2 kids while sleep-deprived was its own special kind of chaos. They argued about stupid things, whose turn it was to do laundry, whether Dylan should be allowed to eat chicken nuggets for every meal, how to handle Ethan's 4 a.m. crying sessions. But they also figured out how to apologize, how to take breaks when they were too tired to be rational, how to ask for help instead of suffering in silence. Lena went back to work when Ethan was 12 weeks old, and it was brutal at first. Leaving him with a nanny felt wrong, even though the nanny was lovely. Pumping in the bathroom at work made her feel like a dairy cow. Coming home exhausted only to have Dylan need help with homework, and Ethan need to nurse, and Caleb need to have an actual conversation about something other than bodily fluids. But slowly, it got easier. Ethan started sleeping longer stretches. Dylan adapted to having less one-on-one attention. Lena and Caleb learned to communicate without complete sentences because sometimes that was all they had energy for. 6 months after the wedding, Lena made a breakthrough in her research, a new flavor compound that could reduce sodium in processed foods without sacrificing taste. It was significant enough that Dr. Reeves submitted it for publication, and suddenly Lena was getting attention for being a scientist again instead of just Caleb Vaughn's wife. The first time someone interviewed her about her work without mentioning her marriage, she called Caleb crying happy tears. "This is what you worked for," he said. "You earned this." "I know, it just feels good to be seen for what I can do instead of who I'm married to." You've always been more than who you're married to. The rest of the world just needed to catch up. Dylan started first grade that fall, and watching him walk into school with his dinosaur backpack made Lena surprisingly emotional. He'd started calling her mom consistently now, without asking permission first, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "You okay?" Caleb asked, watching her wipe her eyes. "He's growing up. That's generally what kids do." "I know, but..." She stopped. "What if I'm not doing it right, being his mom? What if I'm screwing him up?" "You're not screwing him up. He's happy and healthy and obsessed with dinosaurs. That's all we can ask for." Caleb took her hand. "You're a good mom, Lena, to both of them. Stop doubting yourself." Ethan hit his first birthday with a party that was definitely more for the adults than the baby. He smashed cake into his hair and cried when everyone sang to him, and it was perfect in its messiness. Lena looked around at the chaos, Dylan chasing his cousins through the backyard, Caleb trying to wipe frosting off Ethan's face, Maya taking approximately 1 million photos, and felt something settle in her chest. This was her life now. Messy and loud and nothing like she'd planned. But it was hers, and she wouldn't trade it for anything. That night, after the guests had left and both boys were asleep, Lena found Caleb in their bedroom looking at something on his phone. "What are you reading?" she asked. "Article about Victoria Chen. She settled the lawsuit today. Had to issue a public apology and pay damages." He put the phone down. "It's over. How do you feel about that?" "Relieved, mostly. That whole thing feels like it happened to different people." He pulled her onto the bed next to him. "We've come a long way from fake photos and hospital scares." "We really have." Lena curled into his side. "Sometimes I still can't believe this is real, that I get to keep this." "You get to keep it, all of it. Me, the boys, the whole package. Even when I'm annoying?" "Especially then." She poked him in the ribs. "That's not very romantic. I used up all my romance at the wedding. Now you get the real me, moderately tired and covered in baby spit up. I can live with that." They lay there in comfortable silence for a while, and Lena thought about the woman she'd been a year and a half ago, terrified of depending on anyone, convinced that asking for help was weakness, so focused on surviving that she'd forgotten what it felt like to actually live. That woman wouldn't recognize her life now, wouldn't understand how she'd let someone in completely, how she'd build a family out of what started as a mistake, how she'd learned that sometimes the best things came from the moments you didn't plan for. "What are you thinking about?" Caleb asked. "How much everything's changed." "Good change or bad change?" "Terrifying change that turned out to be good." She propped herself up on one elbow to look at him. "I spent so long trying to control everything, making sure I didn't need anyone, building walls so I wouldn't get hurt, and then you came along and knocked all of it down." "Sorry?" "Don't be. I needed someone to knock them down. I just didn't know it yet." She kissed him softly. "Thank you for being stubborn enough not to give up. Thank you for being brave enough to let me in." Ethan started crying from the nursery, his usual 11 p.m. wake-up call, and they both groaned. "Your turn," Lena said. "I did the last feeding." "No, that was me. You did the diaper change. We need a better system. We need a baby who sleeps through the night." "That too." But Caleb was already getting up. "I've got him. You sleep." Lena watched him go, this man who'd changed her entire world, and felt that familiar warmth spread through her chest. Love, she realized. Not the desperate, anxious kind she'd felt at the beginning when she was waiting for him to leave, but the solid, steady kind that came from building something real together. She fell asleep listening to Caleb singing softly to Ethan in the next room, and for the first time in her life, she wasn't scared of losing it. 2 years later, Lena found herself in a familiar position, staring at a pregnancy test showing 2 pink lines. "You have got to be kidding me," she said to her reflection. She and Caleb had talked about maybe having another baby eventually, but eventually was supposed to be further in the future. Ethan was only 2. Dylan was 7, and finally sleeping through the night consistently. They'd just reached a point where life felt manageable. And now this. She took the test to show Caleb, who was in the kitchen making breakfast while supervising both boys. Dylan was building something with Legos at the table, and Ethan was in his high chair throwing Cheerios on the floor with scientific precision. "Hey," Lena said, "we need to talk." Caleb looked up from the eggs he was scrambling and saw what she was holding. His eyes went wide. "Is that—" "Yep." "Are you—" "Very." He stared at the test, then at her, then back at the test. Then he started laughing. "This is not the reaction I expected," Lena said. "I'm sorry, I'm just—" He couldn't stop laughing. Of course this would happen right when things got easy. "So you're not upset?"
Upset? Lena, we're going to have another baby. He crossed the room and pulled her into a hug, careful of the test still in her hand. I'm not upset. I'm terrified and excited and wondering how we're going to fit another car seat in the car, but I'm not upset. 3 kids is a lot of kids. Good thing we've had practice. Dylan looked up from his Legos. What's going on?
Lena and Caleb looked at each other, having a silent conversation. Then Caleb knelt down to Dylan's level. "How would you feel about being a big brother again?" Dylan's face lit up. "Really? Another baby?" "Really?" "Yes." He jumped up and hugged Caleb, then ran over to hug Lena. "Can it be a sister this time?" "I love Ethan, but sisters are cool too." "We can't control that part, buddy," Lena said, ruffling his hair.
That's okay. I'll love them anyway.
He went back to his Legos, already chattering about all the things he'd teach the new baby. Ethan, oblivious to the conversation, threw another Cheerio on the floor and clapped at his own accomplishment. Lena looked at Caleb, at their boys, at the chaos of their kitchen on a random Tuesday morning. "We're really doing this again." "We really are." He kissed her, and she could feel him smiling against her lips. "Third time's the charm, right? That's not how that saying works." It is now. The pregnancy was easier than the first one, probably because Lena knew what to expect this time. The morning sickness was still brutal, but she had better medications and a husband who'd learned to cook things that didn't make her nauseous. Work was supportive. Dr. Reeves just rolled her eyes and said, "Again?" but approved her schedule changes without complaint. They found out at 20 weeks it was a girl, and Dylan was thrilled. He insisted on helping pick out her name and lobbied hard for Dinosaur before settling on agreeing with Lena's suggestion of Charlotte. "Charlotte Vaughn," Caleb said, testing it out. "Charlie for short." "I like Charlie," Dylan agreed. "When she's born, can I hold her?" "Of course you can. You're going to be her big brother. That's an important job." Dylan took that responsibility seriously. He spent the rest of the pregnancy telling Lena's stomach about dinosaurs and outer space, preparing his sister for the world she'd be entering. Charlotte arrived 3 weeks early, apparently it was a family tradition now, on a cold January morning. The labor was faster than Ethan's had been, which was both good and slightly terrifying. Lena barely made it to the hospital before her water broke, and 4 hours later, they had a daughter. She was tiny and red and had a full head of dark hair just like her brother's. When the nurse placed her on Lena's chest, Charlotte opened her eyes and looked up at her mother, like she'd been waiting to meet her. "Hi, baby girl," Lena whispered. "We've been waiting for you." Caleb was crying again. He cried at all the births, apparently, and took about 1,000 photos of Charlotte before the nurses even finished cleaning her up. When they brought the boys to meet her later that day, Ethan was cautious but curious, and Dylan was instantly in love. "She's so small," Dylan said, touching her tiny hand with one finger. "Was I that small?" "You were," Caleb confirmed. "Weird." But Dylan was smiling. "I'm going to protect her from everything. She's going to be the safest baby in the world." "She's lucky to have you as a big brother," Lena said. That night, after the boys had gone home with Patricia, and it was just Lena and Caleb and Charlotte, they sat in the hospital room watching their daughter sleep. "3 kids," Lena said. "We have 3 kids." "We do." Caleb was holding Charlotte, refusing to put her down even though the nurses kept offering to take her to the nursery. Are you happy? I'm exhausted and sore and my boobs are about to explode, but yeah, I'm happy. She looked at him. Are you?
Happier than I knew how to be. He shifted carefully so he could kiss her without disturbing the baby. Thank you. For what? For saying yes to all of it. The baby, the proposal, building this crazy life with me. You could have run at any point and you stayed. I almost did run, multiple times. But you didn't, that's what matters.
Lena thought about that. About all the moments she'd been terrified and stayed anyway. Meeting Caleb in the lab that first day. The hospital when she'd passed out. Accepting the apartment. Saying yes to the proposal. Each decision had felt impossible at the time, but looking back, they'd all been leading here. I'm glad I stayed, she said quietly. Me too. The first year with 3 kids was absolutely insane. Someone was always crying or hungry or needed something, and Lena spent most days feeling like she was running on fumes and sheer stubbornness. But they figured it out the same way they'd figured out everything else. Together, messily, with a lot of trial and error. Dylan thrived in his big brother role, helping with bottles and diaper changes and entertaining Charlotte when she was fussy. Ethan was still figuring out how he felt about not being the baby anymore, but he was adjusting. And Charlotte was surprisingly chill for a baby who'd entered a household of chaos. Lena cut back her hours at work to part-time, which she'd been terrified to do because it felt like giving up. But Dr. Reeves assured her that her position would be there when she was ready to come back full-time. And in the meantime, she could do research from home and come in for important meetings. You can have a career and a family, Dr. Reeves told her. It doesn't have to be either or. It was advice Lena wished someone had given her years ago. That asking for flexibility wasn't weakness. That taking time for her kids didn't erase everything she'd accomplished professionally. That she could be a scientist and a mother and a wife all at once without having to be perfect at any of them. On Charlotte's first birthday, they had another party in the backyard. Smaller this time, just family and close friends. Dylan was 8 now and had opinions about everything. Ethan was 3 and into everything. Charlotte was walking and getting into trouble with her brother's help. Lena sat on the porch, watching Caleb chase all 3 kids through the yard, and Maya plopped down next to her with a beer. You look tired, Maya observed. I am tired. I'm always tired. Tired is my natural state now. But you're happy. It wasn't a question, but Lena answered anyway. Yeah, I'm happy. Good. Because watching you those first few months when you were pregnant with Ethan was terrifying. I thought you were going to run away to Canada or something. I considered it. I know. That's why it was terrifying. Maya took a sip of her beer. But you didn't. You stayed and you built this. She gestured at the yard, the house, the family. I'm proud of you. For what? Getting pregnant 3 times and accidentally marrying a billionaire? For letting yourself be loved. That was always the hard part for you. Lena felt her throat get tight. It's still hard sometimes. I still wake up sometimes thinking it's all going to disappear. But it hasn't. No, it hasn't. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching Caleb teach Dylan how to do a cartwheel while Ethan tried to copy them, and Charlotte clapped from her position on the grass. You know what the crazy part is? Lena said. I used to think I had to have everything figured out before I could let anyone in. Perfect job, perfect life, perfect version of myself. But none of that happened. I got pregnant by accident, moved in with a guy I barely knew, and built a family in the middle of complete chaos. And it worked out anyway. Better than if I'd planned it, probably. Lena smiled. Turns out you don't have to be perfect to deserve good things. You just have to be brave enough to try. That's very philosophical for someone running on 3 hours of sleep. Sleep deprivation makes me deep. Maya laughed, and they watched Charlotte take a few wobbly steps toward her father before falling on her diapered bottom. Caleb scooped her up and blew raspberries on her stomach until she shrieked with laughter. That night, after the guests had left and all 3 kids were finally asleep, a miracle in itself, Lena found Caleb cleaning up the backyard. Leave it, she said. We can deal with it tomorrow. If we leave it, there will be ants everywhere by morning. Then we'll have ants. Come inside. He looked at her, at the yard full of birthday decorations and half-eaten cake, and shrugged. Okay, ants it is. They went inside and collapsed on the couch together, too tired to even turn on the TV. 3 years ago today, we got married, Caleb said. Was it really 3 years? Feels like longer. Thanks. I mean that in a good way, like we've built a whole lifetime in 3 years. Lena shifted to look at him. Do you ever regret it? Any of it? Not even for a second. He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Do you? No. But I wouldn't have believed that was my answer if you'd asked me 2 years ago. She took his hand, threading their fingers together. I spent so long thinking that needing people made me weak, that the only way to protect myself was to not let anyone close enough to hurt me. And then you crashed into my life and refused to leave, and I had to learn that letting people in isn't weakness. It's just being human. That's very philosophical for, I swear, if you make a sleep deprivation joke right now, I'm going to divorce you. Caleb laughed. Noted. He pulled her closer. For what it's worth, you taught me something too. What's that? That I didn't have to be perfect to deserve happiness. That it was okay to be messy and make mistakes and still be a good father, a good person. He paused. You made me believe in second chances, in new beginnings, in the possibility that life could be more than just going through motions. Lena felt tears starting because apparently that was just what happened when she was tired and emotional now, and buried her face in his shoulder. We're both really sappy tonight. It's our anniversary. We're allowed. They sat there holding each other while the house settled into nighttime quiet around them. 3 kids sleeping upstairs, a life they'd built together from nothing but chance and stubbornness and learning to trust when everything in them said not to. It wasn't perfect. They still argued about stupid things, still had days where they were too tired to be good to each other, still worried about money sometimes, even though Caleb was a billionaire because old habits died hard. Still had moments of doubt and fear and wondering if they were doing any of it right. But they had each other. They had their kids. They had a family that maybe started as an accident but had become the most intentional thing either of them had ever built. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Lena lifted her head and kissed Caleb, soft and slow and full of all the words she didn't know how to say. When she pulled back, he was smiling. I love you, he said. I love you too. She settled back against him. Even when you leave birthday decorations in the yard for the ants, we can get them tomorrow. We really should get them now. Do you want to get them now? Absolutely not. Then we'll deal with it tomorrow. He kissed the top of her head. Tomorrow is soon enough. And for once, Lena didn't argue. She just closed her eyes and let herself exist in this moment, messy and imperfect and exactly where she was supposed to be. Tomorrow would come soon enough. Tonight, she had everything she needed.